seriousness of the current worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, the rapid spread of the infection throughout Utah, and its potentially deadly and life-altering effects, I, Troy Stout, as mayor of Alpine and chair of the Alpine City Council, have determined that conducting an electronic meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. Accordingly, pursuant to Utah Code Section 52-4-207, line 4, electronic meetings will not be required to have an anchor location at this time. This written determination will expire 30 days from the date it is signed, which is today. So pursuant to that, we are holding today's meeting online, and will in all likelihood hold our next meeting in November online. I'm very much hopeful that by that time we will see the numbers that we've seen peak and spike so badly recently will have subsided by then and started to descend downward. And I'm hoping that the whole country, that's true for the whole country, especially for our area. So that said, we will begin tonight's meeting with a roll call, beginning with Jessica.
Jessica Smuin, present.
And Greg. Greg, you're muted.
Sorry, Greg Gordon, present.
And Carla.
Carla Merrill, present.
Lon.
Lon Lott, present.
And Jason Thielen is excused tonight. He's out of town. I would also like to welcome our chief of police, Chief Brian William, our fire chief, Chief Reed Thompson, Shane Sorensen, our city manager, and Craig, our new city attorney, to the meeting tonight. Lon, you've been asked to offer a word of prayer to start our meeting.
Yes. Our Heavenly Father, as we approach thee this night, we give thee thanks for the opportunity to serve in our community, to be able to help in making a community of happy citizens. We pray that we may do so in a manner that's pleasing unto thee. We pray that we may help resolve any disputes and contentions that might be out there in the community. We pray, especially at this time, that those who are suffering from illness that may either be COVID related or other that is causing stress amongst families in our community, that they may be healed. We pray that those who are searching for remedies for the COVID-19 virus will be able to find them swiftly and help in the reduction of those who are suffering from this illness. We also pray for those who are on the front lines of helping within our community, the firefighters and police force, as they are at risk at many moments, that they will be protected. We pray for these things in Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Lon. We'll move to the consent calendar. Looks like we have a couple of bond releases with Brookside and the Ridge at Alpine, in addition to the minutes. Is there any question or comments on the consent calendar? Or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Lon.
That we approve the consent calendar with some grammatical changes to the minutes that I have made with Bonnie already, and some typos. Very little content changed, but I don't know if there's others who have talked to Bonnie on that. So that is my motion, then, that we approve the consent calendar.
Okay, do we have a second to Lon's?
I actually had a question.
Carla, would you like to second the motion so we can then ask questions?
Sure, I will Actually, no, I don't want to second it.
Okay. We have a motion on the table. It needs to be seconded, and then we can move forward with
I-
discussion.
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks. Carla, go ahead.
I had a question. You said, grammatical errors I'm okay with, but you said some content changes. Is there any, can you be more specific about the content changes to the minutes?
Yeah, so on line 17, page 5, lawn lot said outdoor lighting signs, schools signs shut down. I inserted at a certain time. It is difficult to enforce soffit lighting. So I inserted that school signs are shut down at a certain time. It just said certain school signs were shut down.
Okay, so it's still, to me, it's more grammatical things as opposed to being content, right?
Okay, yeah, well, there was one other thing that was content, and it was on page 2, when our new city attorney, Craig Hall, introduced himself on line 9, page 2, it said he and his team are available 24/7. I didn't understand it that way. I understood it that their hours are from 9 to 5, and he would prefer that we didn't call in any later than the 9-ish hour. And so I suggested that correction be made.
Okay. Thank you, Lon.
Greg, do you want to offer any comment on that? I think that sounds like what you did say.
I was joking when I said 24/7, generally 9 to 5, but we can be called early in the morning until late at night. It's no problem. Shane and I have been doing that recently, and we even visited it over the weekend, so it's not a big deal.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so I made it more reflective of what he did actually say. So.
Okay, is that everything, Carla?
It is?
Okay, any other comments or questions on the motion? All right, having heard none, we'll move forward to the vote. All in favor of accepting the, of Lon's motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, sounds unanimous. Thank you very much. We'll move on to public comment. So Austin, we were talking about this earlier. Were there any comments that were made that did not have anything to do with an item on the agenda?
Okay, yes, there are a few items here, so let me go ahead and pull those up here real quick. Okay, so our first public comment that we received was with regards to the Timberline Middle School. This comment came from Benton Collins, and in summary, he comments that thank you for the time and effort that you've taken to address this issue on our behalf. They understand the need for sporting events. However, they feel that the fields are overbooked without sufficient parking, and they strongly encourage and approve of measures to reduce the utilization of the fields and promote parking in the parking area. So I guess that's actually one of our agenda items, so I'm sorry. I apologize for reading that. Let's see, what else do we have here? Also an agenda item. Okay, and then I guess they're all on items on our agenda, so.
Okay. Shane?
Yes.
Could you please send me a copy of the updated agenda, because I'm looking at the online agenda right now and it doesn't look like it was updated.
Okay.
With all of our action. If you could send that to my personal email, please.
Okay.
Okay, so Austin, it sounds like that's the extent of our public comment.
Yeah, that's everything. All the comments we received are with were with regards to the Timberline parking and the guard shack in Three Falls. So
Okay, thank you. We'll allow for another 5 to 10 minutes of public input while we move on. Austin, would you please let me know if anything comes in? I know that being online, it kind of creates special challenges for some people who might want to chime in with public comment. But we'll have that cut off at 7:20 for any incoming emails. So we'll move along with our reports and presentations. Shane, would you like to talk to us about the financial report?
Yeah, so as I go through the financial report, I don't see any real issues in here. There are a couple things that look a little bit skewed, and that's because of some CARES or let's say COVID related items that at some point we'll have a budget adjustment and move some money around. And then there are some areas where it looks like we haven't spent a lot of money, and that is subjects that are planned will not really start until March. And so on the kind of tail end of the budget year, there will be more project expenditures. I also included just an update for the last month on sales tax revenue. Looking at the month, so it would be, let's see, it'd be the month of August. We were up 6.33% over the same month for last year, but for the year up to this point in the budget year, we're up almost 12%, so about 11.69. So things still look good, and we're just moving along through the budget year and getting some projects going. So
Maybe you could take a minute while we're on the topic of financials, and maybe give us an update. You and I have met about this, the progress on City Hall and what's happening there with our budget. That's gone a little bit further north than we anticipated. Would you give us kind of a capsulized version of that?
yeah, so with these CARES funds, it's been kind of a moving target, and recommendations keep getting changed on how they should be spent. The city received a little over $738,000 as their share. After the last city council meeting, the county actually came with some further recommendations that they strongly encouraged us to spend our funds wherever we could on public safety wages. They said that's a very safe way to go based on the recommendations. There were some equipment and some different things like that before they had said, yeah, those are good things. Then they kind of backed off of that a little bit. So we had to have our final report in. We were supposed to have the funds spent by November 2nd. We had to have our report in by, I believe it was actually yesterday, the 9th. We submitted last week. And so we took 100% and went public safety based on that recommendation that came in, and knowing that we wouldn't have another city council meeting until tonight. I know the last direction from the council was to use it on the public safety wages and the city hall entrance. So we figure we just take that money that was allocated for our public safety budget, and that would be kind of moved over for some of these other things that we showed prior on our reports, one of them being the city hall entrance. So at the city hall entrance, the last several working days have been quite noisy and had various different smells between concrete getting cut and metal getting cut and torches and welders and dust and everything. But it's coming along really nice. Stop by and take a look. Maybe give it 2 more days and most of the real noisy and dirty stuff will be complete. They should start framing soon. It's been kind of a project with a lot of special things, and I believe we're originally it was about 175,000. There was a error found on the spreadsheet where the different sections were not totaling at the bottom. Anyway, it's about 200,000. But if you come by and take a look, I can show you all the special things that had to be dealt with on this. And then our restroom is scheduled to be here, I think, the first week of December for the cemetery. We're probably going to just set it on the ground and then actually install it where we want it in the spring, so that we'll have a little bit more time to come up with the cemetery layout and work out exactly where it should be. So those are a couple of the main ones. And then we've talked, about the pickleball courts, and I believe, Austin, there's a hearing scheduled for, is it the 17th, for next Tuesday?
Yes. Yeah, for the
to make
pickleball
those-
courts. Yeah.
To make those changes to Healy Park, and then that would be for sure be a spring project. So, any specific questions on anything that we talked about before?
I think Carla volunteered to host any pickleball tournaments in her driveway until those get put into the new park.
Right.
Yeah, I think just a comment. I think to Shane's point on the city reconstruction, I think anytime you start tearing into an old building like this, you have some unknowns, and it is typically indicative of a budget issue when they come up. It's hard to plan for a building like this, and right now I think we're running close to 30 to 40,000 over our original budget.
Yeah.
And hopefully it stays there. We don't like to have any surprises, but I think we should expect some surprises out of a building at that age.
Yeah. One that I did not mention was the upgrades to the city council room. That's scheduled to be done about the end of the year. It possibly could creep into January.
Does that create for us the timing of those expenditures?
No, because that's where it was beneficial to use those funds for the public safety wages, and then take the other funds that we have till June 30th to spend to move over. So that actually helped us there.
Great. Okay. Do you want to move into item B, Shane?
Yes. So there's actually 3 sheets in your packet. I'm really only going to focus on the first one, unless you have questions on the other 2. They all have the same numbers. Just the first sheet is just an overall summary of water use. 2020 has been a banner year for many things, some good, some bad. We had extremely high pressure irrigation use this year compared to our last 10 plus years averages. We used 6,010 acre feet, which is a 34.19% increase over last year. It was extremely dry year, very hot. So, that would relate to this higher usage, but it is concerning to, make it sustainable and keep our system operational and let, people be able to keep their yards green and have the city look nice. So, we are, now that we have our costs, we're firing back up with the rate study so that we can try to get this completed this winter and bring that back to the city council to review some possible rate structures.
Shane, when should we plan on seeing that to review as a council? February, is that a realistic time frame?
Yeah, I'd say the end of February, 1st of March.
I'd like to have at least 30 days of notice to people go out to give them an idea of what the plan looks like before we turn the water back on. So it'd be good to get that out by the end of February if possible.
Yeah. Okay. We'll track for that.
I was struck by how similar this year was to 2012 there, both in terms of water usage and well usage. It looks like, I mean, so 2012 must have been an extremely dry year as well. Maybe even worse, I guess, huh?
That was the
If
year
you
of our,
recall.
that was our big fire year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, it was. And last year we had the extremely wet spring. And so that, you know, it was clear into June before a lot of people ever had to sprinkle their lawns because of all the rain we had. So kind of have two back-to-back years that are on different ends of the spectrum.
And Shane, I had a question. Did years like this where we run so high on the wells, does that wear down the wells faster? Do we expect more failures next year because of that? I mean, what did we see in 2019 after 2018, which was higher than this year? Is that a risk we need to sort of budget and plan for?
Yeah, it's actually something that we're dealing with already, and I don't know that I can attribute it to we use more water this year. We have issues with a couple of wells that we're dealing with right now. We should have them back and operational for the spring, so they'll be there if we need them. But it's kind of, in my mind, more of a we need to plan for the short term as far as repairing wells and things like that. But long term, with a lot of well use, and this is across the board throughout the county, the water levels drop, and then it costs more to pump, and they pump less, and it just creates issues. So it'd be great if we could get a good winter, which the forecast is not that way. It's the long range forecast is warmer and drier than normal, than average, I guess. So we'll see what happens.
Okay, any more questions for Shane on the water usage? Let's see, Shane, did you send that agenda? I've got to make sure I've got the updated.
I'm actually we might have to have Bonnie send it, because I started looking and then it was my turn to talk, and
I haven't
I'm
seen
not-
an amended agenda for this time. There was an amended agenda last time, but I was looking for it as well. I don't see an amended agenda this time in my email.
Shane, maybe you could help us. Is item A still resolution 2020-14?
Yes, it is. I believe where an item got added was either right at the bottom or second from the bottom. So we'll have Bonnie send that out to everybody right now.
Okay, thank you. So, Austin, would you like to kind of reintroduce 2020-14? I know I had talked about this before. It was tabled, and it's gone back to for some revisions.
Yeah, so let me go ahead and just go over what has changed since the last time that this came to the meeting. So this was tabled, felt that there was some improvements needed, and we needed our newest city attorneys to take a look at that and give us some feedback. So the first thing that you'll see here on your screen is a new resolution. So this is actually replacing the language of the last resolution that you saw at the last meeting. The biggest difference that you're going to see here is that it really walks you through a history. So you see all these statements here on your screen that say whereas, whereas, whereas. Each one of these kind of walks you through a critical point in the progress of this transportation element. So, it outlines specific dates, specific meetings. September 25th was when it first initiated, July 14th, and it outlines the dates when the public hearing was held. And what this is good for is that with this resolution in the future, if we ever have to look back and say, why did we adopt that resolution? Why did we adopt that transportation element? Did we hold a public hearing for it? All those questions can be answered just simply by looking at the resolution. So this was an idea from Craig Hall, our new city attorney, and I think it's a great idea. I think it really, just helps us moving forward, having all that history there. So that's the first big thing that you're going to see different here tonight. The other thing is the city attorneys also did take an opportunity to look at the actual language here in our transportation element. So as a reminder, our general plan is based on goals and policies. So a transportation element only has one goal, and then it has 6 different policies. The policies go over things like safe and efficient traffic circulation, connecting our neighborhoods and our trail systems, acquiring financial aid for streets, maintaining our streets, promoting the use of roundabouts instead of traffic lights. And the newest thing to be added here is to preserve our planned connections to other municipalities. So we don't want to create new connections, but rather just preserve the planned connections that we currently have. So that can include stub streets and existing streets. And so the city attorneys have specifically kind of refined the language in 1.6, which is you're seeing on your screen in green, and just made it flow better and really get after what we've been discussing in all of our meetings as what we want to implement in our transportation element. So that's kind of a summary of what has changed since this last came to our meeting on this table.
And for those of you who may not have looked down below, that 1.6 continues on to the next page. I think the verbiage there is pretty significant about the approval process. I like 1.6 a lot. I think it kind of summarizes what we're trying to accomplish. Any comments or questions?
Yeah, yes, Mayor. I did receive, Austin, a email from you today on a revised revised thing. The packet,
Yeah,
paper packet has an incorrect compared to what you sent us later, later yesterday.
Yeah, good catch. I apologize. So what I just showed you on the screen is not the newest language. I just barely pulled it up now. So this is actually the new language now.
Yeah, and I like that language better than the first one as well. So. So Mayor, maybe if we could maybe have Craig make any comments you'd like on that, the reason for the change just recently. I would like him to comment on any additional street connection to such areas would require city council approval and appropriate amendments to the general street plan. That was the one added in. That's added in even to the first amended plan.
Yeah, Craig, would you like to take that?
Yeah. When we looked at it, understanding what the goal was, so we wanted to go back and I think it's section 1.6, and to make sure that it was clear that is the intent, the policy, the goal of the city council to limit the interconnections between, limit any new interconnections over, if they're over and above the existing plan connections, then there's a very specific process by which those changes, amendments, additions, modifications would be made. And that's why we were very careful when we wrote the last sentence of 1.6 to set forth a process for approval. And we're very comfortable with that language. I believe Hiram and Austin spent a lot of time on Monday in tweaking and wordsmithing the words. And so I'm very comfortable with the language and the policy. And you've seen what we did on the resolution. We want to write a history so that in the event that anybody questions the process by which you had adopted these amendments to the plan, we can refer back to the resolution and say, this is the process that we went through. Very deliberate, and it was not in some rush fashion. So we're comfortable with the language and the process.
Yeah, and it occurred to me as I read through this the first time that it addresses one of the items we've discussed in past council meetings to layer the process so that by circumventing or getting through one part of the process, that just gets you the gateway into the next process to be approved. By approving at one level doesn't mean it gets through. It has to pass through the street master plan and the general plan and any other ordinances that may apply. Any other thoughts on this as it's written? Carla, do you have anything you'd like to say?
No, I do like the new wording. It's I feel like it's more succinct for us as a city council, and also for anybody else that would try for that connection. They know exactly what the process is and what they need to do.
Mm-hmm. Good. Greg, do you have anything to add?
No, thank you. I think it looks good.
Okay, terrific. Jessica?
Nothing to add.
Great. Lon, did you have anything else?
No, that is good. I just want, that last sentence really does help, though, to give us, it doesn't eliminate someone coming in and requesting something different, but it does give us the ability to protect ourselves very clearly.
Yeah, I agree. And it gives us a filtration process. So with that, is there someone who's prepared to make a motion on this?
Yes, I'll make a motion, Mayor, that we adopt resolution number R 2020-14, adopting the transportation element of the general plan.
I
Okay, we have
second.
a motion by Lon Lott, and I'm sorry, did I hear a second by Carla?
Correct.
Okay, we have a motion by Lon Lott, seconded by Carla Merrill. Are there any questions or further comment on the motion?
Just very clearly that the one we see on the screen right now is the one we are adopting, and not the paper portion that originally went out with the packet.
And also not the version that is showing on our website right now for the meeting.
Correct.
Clarify that.
So I don't know how more clear we can get. I guess when minutes come out next week, I will double check that this is the one that we got, but this is the one I propose we adopt.
So I just want to err on the side of caution on this, Lon. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read 1.6 out loud in case anybody is listening online or on YouTube who is currently looking at the version that is posted on our website, which is incorrect. The correct one, section 1.6 would read, limit intermunicipal and unincorporated county street connections to existing planned connections only. Ensure that street connections to other municipalities, unincorporated county, or other areas outside the city boundaries are compatible with the goals and policies of the general plan. Any additional street connection to such areas would require city council approval and appropriate amendments to the general plan, street master plan, and applicable city ordinances. So if you're online watching this meeting and you do not see that version, please refer to that shown on the screen right now. This is what the motion includes. Having said that, with no further questions on the motion, if there are none, I will move to a vote. All in favor?
Hey,
Aye.
Aye.
I heard 4 ayes. Are there any opposed? I think we only have 4 council members attending. The motion passes unanimously. 20-14 has passed.
Mayor, may I
Yes.
I hate to jump in, but I'm going to do so. On a resolution, I would prefer a voice vote of each individual council member so that it's reflected in the minutes as their individual vote, not just one general voice vote.
Okay, in the past, Craig, we've only done that for those votes requiring financial, but we have done online as well because it's hard to tell who's voting. So I agree. Thank you.
so Mayor, I think maybe this online portion of the time too, we do that every time anyway.
Yep.
Lon Lot in favor, aye.
Carla,
Carla Merrill, aye.
Jessica,
Jessica Smuin, aye.
Greg.
Greg Gordon, aye.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Craig, for that that input. We actually started our Zoom meetings that way back in March and April, and kind of got away from it.
You will notice, I may say, you may notice on the back, on the second page of the resolution, it has a portion where the individual votes will be recorded. And that will be our practice going forward.
Thank you.
Hey, Mayor, that brings me to one point on the minutes. At last meeting, we had an anchor location and there were a few of us there at the anchor location. Did the minutes need to reflect who was attending virtually and then who was attending at the anchor location?
Craig, what's the requirement there?
Let me get back here.
You muted yourself.
I think Lon is correct. I think the minutes need to reflect that the anchor location was City Hall. And for example, tonight, the minutes should reflect that, Mayor, if you haven't signed already, you will be presented with a form allowing the City Council meeting to go forward without an anchor location. That's required by this amendment to the state statute. There you go. Very good. I want to make sure you got it.
Okay, so I did not make that correction to those minutes, but I had a note. I should have discussed that earlier, Mayor. I'm sorry. But
You
Bonnie
discussed-
could make.
Lon, you did.
Yeah.
Lon discussed it with me, and I can go ahead and add that to the motion.
Is everyone else good with that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
And the
you,
mayor did. And the mayor did sign that form.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to item B. The Trail Master Plan, Resolution 2020, R2020-15. Okay, Austin, would you like to take this?
Yeah. So again, this is another item that was on our last agenda. And after some conversation, it was discovered that there were a few inconsistencies and things that needed to be corrected on here. So Jed has spent significant time on this, working with, going through the minutes of the last meeting, implementing all the feedback that was given, as well as communicating with the trail committee to make sure that everything is accurate on here. So this should have every comment that was made in the last meeting. Everything should be implemented now and should be corrected on this map that you see before you.
I was going to ask about the trails. Somebody had mentioned, I think it was Breezy or Will, had mentioned that we were creating 2 more trails coming down off of the upper portion of Three Falls, as I understood it. Is that, I don't see them reflected on these maps.
There's 3 of them, Troy.
Oh, there I see them.
Oh,
I
sorry,
see 'em.
this is
Yeah.
Breezy. I'm
Hi, Breezy.
on via Zoom. Yep,
Yep,
those are
I-
the 3.
All right, good.
And then that was there at the last meeting, but over in Lambert Park, we didn't call out the walking run only and the downhill. I think it was just the walking run only. And where I can't use a cursor. Yeah, that right there where the cursor is a pedestrian. The trail to the right that's the downhill green, a bike only trail. And then just up above it, there's another dotted line that is a pedestrian. And that's already right where that cursor is. That's actually where the trail stops. We had an Eagle Scout project and they went to that area. I'm going to have to maybe get permission to send some people up on motorcycles to ride on that this spring and try to create a little bit more of a trail. It just gets overgrown when they on these until we can get it connected. So I think come spring, we'd like to get that thing extended and connected all the way to the top of spring. We just need to get in there with some chainsaws and create a little bit more trail through the trees. But we're about halfway done.
Okay.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
Breezy, there's a trail coming in on Fango, and Will said that it's coming into Three Falls. Do you know? So it's off of Hog Hollow Road, kind of across from Fango. Do you know where that comes out on into Three Falls?
No. And that is they call it a hoof and boot, where it's pedestrian and
Walking
horse
all the
only.
way? Okay.
Yeah. And I know Draper's been trying to work on getting a connection from Bonneville Shoreline.
Mhm.
And, without seeing their master plan, I couldn't tell you exactly where it's going to go.
Okay.
But I know there is talk of trying to get it connected to Three Falls.
There's also, Breezy, have you seen the trail, the new one, Longview, that Draper's putting in?
I don't,
It's Carla, where Fango comes out onto Hog Hollow. If you cross Hog Hollow and go downhill 100 feet, you run into a new trailhead for Longview.
No,
And
that was the trail I was talking about.
That's the trail that Carla's talking about.
Okay, that's actually not a hoof and boot. That's next to hoof and boot.
Okay.
But Longview is an all-traffic trail.
Oh, okay.
It's a 4-mile route that takes you back up to the top of near the top of Suncrest. But it kind of meanders over toward Three Falls, and it hooks up. I think is it Peak View that's up there?
Peak View's up at the top of Three
Yeah.
Falls. Yeah.
It ties into Peak View.
Oh, okay. Oh, cool. No, I thought that was a hoof and boot.
So I just had one more comment, Mayor.
Go ahead.
So I was wondering, that walking only trail through Lambert, I was wondering if that would be a trail that, since it currently does not really have a name, if that's one that we can name after Ed's, in honor or in memory of Ed's wife. Remember when he came?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I think they already named this upper trail where the cursor is. They named that for his wife. I think that was kind of what was decided, but
Right, but I don't know if that was totally decided. I know that's what,
Yeah.
but I feel like because that trail is, mostly, I would say, a bike more than a walking. If there's a dedicated walking, which is what they did the most, I feel like that would be more of a tribute to her and what she did and what she enjoyed. But I don't know, maybe not. And then also, Breezy, you know how I feel about naming those trails. I still want a trail named after you, Will, and Trent. So those are up. I
Ever.
told you.
We can't forget Ever. How about you just name a trail in Everett's name instead of mine?
No, I already have your name. It's Easy Breezy for the Green Flow Trail. Come on.
Oh, we'll see.
Easy
But I-
breezy. I'm campaigning for it.
Yeah. That trail may get taken down. That sign would actually get taken down and hung in a bunch of kids' bedrooms. You don't want that.
Okay.
You'll just be spending all of our budget replacing that sign.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Okay, well, any other questions about this? I know Carla, I got a message from Carla asking about a pump track. I would love a pump track. I don't think we've actually identified a location that would be good for a pump track. I can email or text you some ideas. They have movable pump track. I think they're made out of Germany or Switzerland, but it has movable parts. You can take it to Alpine days. You can take it to city parks. You can set it up. I know St. George or Washington has one, but I can send you. I've had it priced out for my own house, but I don't think I like my kids that much to that kind of money on the pump track. I mean, they're not crazy for the beginners. It's about 25 to 30. You can rent them out. You can use them for Alpine days, for special events. But unfortunately, I don't think you'd want to have it out all the time. But we haven't identified a specific location for a pump track.
Breezy, my brother runs the pump track in Coeur d'Alene. If you want me to put in touch with him.
You what?
My brother runs the pump track up in Coeur d'Alene. He put it together, and so he's got some experience. If you want to talk to that.
Yeah, I think they're fantastic. I'd love to get his feedback.
Okay. Does anybody have a motion prepared for resolution?
Just a comment, Mayor. Thanks, Breezy, for working on the map here. I noticed the schools and church landmarks have been removed. I think it was a good simplification. One thing to be aware of, the planned trails in Alpine and private, for whatever reason, when you print that out, because they're a dotted line, they kind of come out as solid. Maybe unless you've got a high definition printer, so it might be. I don't think it's a change to the map really, but I think a dotted line that's not, because when I print it, it comes out as solid. Mostly on the west edge there, you'll see, or that red line that comes out. Red is a little bit dotted, but the blue is pretty much solid on some printers, I guess. So something to be aware of. Might go with a dotted line that's a little more spread if there's an intent to print this.
Okay. Yeah,
Agree. More spacing in between. Yeah. Mayor, I just wanted to add a couple more highlights to this that I think are important to make note of. So one is you'll see here on the right-hand side of the screen in purple, we've now created a new item on the legend. These are county trails. So these are not within the city boundaries, but there are connections through here. There are easements, and then there's some county trails. So that's one thing I wanted to point out. And then the other is all of these proposed trails that Greg was talking about, specifically, like if you look up here at these three falls trails, those are really we're kind of just drawing a line from A to B.
Yeah.
The final alignment is going to have a lot of switchbacks in it, and it's going to look more squiggly at the end. So just wanted to make that known for public record that that's not what those final alignment of those trails.
That would be a really fun downhill if that were the case.
Oh,
pretty fast.
so
Yeah, and Breezy here talking. I think that goes to say that is true with the majority of all the trails. Austin, wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean it's just all trails in general, to be honest. Yeah.
So Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, Carla?
Oh, well, Austin,
Jessica-
I was just going to ask, did we talk about putting directional arrows, or was that for the specific map that would only be in Lambert?
So we discussed that in this map, when you, especially if you print it on a 8x11 sheet, I mean, it's so small that I think a lot of the details get lost. So the idea was that, how we're we're also having that discussion with signage for the parks on those bigger maps that focus specifically like on Lambert Park. We would have directions.
Okay,
Directional on that.
And signage accordingly.
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
Okay, Carla, you wanted to make a motion?
Yes, I move to approve resolution number R 2020-14. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the transportation element. Sorry. Resolution R. No, that's still the 14. Okay. Sorry.
Yes.
Hey, apparently I'm not ready. My screen just jumped. I'm sorry. Okay,
Carla,
let me-
if you're not able to see it, it's 2020-15.
2020-15, the Trail Master Plan as outlined.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Great. We have a motion by Carla Merrill, seconded by Jessica Smewen. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, all in favor? Let's do a
Aye.
roll call. Sorry, starting with Carla.
Carla Merrill, aye.
Jessica,
Jessica Smewen, aye.
Greg,
Greg Gordon, aye.
and Lon.
Lon Lot, aye.
Great job, everybody. I think we just accomplished a lot right there. I think that's great. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the Trail Committee Ordinance, item C. Again, Austin.
Okay, so Trail Committee Ordinance, this is something that we actually has had a lot of work on it since we last brought it here. So Hiram Osterman, one of our city attorneys, he took this and just completely rewrote it to make it more flow better. Hiram working with Craig, and they came up with this language that we have here. So it really, what they've done is really kind of simplify it, make it much more streamlined, easier to understand, and it just clearly outlines, what the duties and of the trail committee is going to be and how it's organized. So, it talks about the number of people, the terms that they serve, the chairperson, the fact that there's no compensation, outlines when they have to meet, and then there's a list of specific duties that they have. So all of that being said, they, just like any other public body, they have to abide by the Public Meetings Act. And so I've asked Craig to write us an opinion on what they have to abide by, just to kind of clarify, for example, that they have to take minutes, that they have to announce their meetings ahead of time, that they have to post their agenda, that they have to have a quorum to make decisions, all of those things. So I've asked that he write an opinion, and he's gonna be working on that for us and have something for us, and that'll be a document that we can share that will kind of reinforce what is in this ordinance here. So that's what we have, and we feel good about it. Feel like this is a good starting point for the Trail Committee and really makes them a formal body.
Okay. So any questions for Austin on that or for Craig? Craig, are you still with us?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Okay.
Mayor, I do have one. I do like all the changes that were made. As we have on item A, that the committee shall be comprised of 5 members who shall be appointed by the mayor with the advice and consent of the city council. That is very appropriate. I appreciate that one. The question I have is then for item H, the very end, removal. The mayor may remove any member of the committee for cause. Do we need to also provide that it was with consent, advice and consent of the council with that one as well, or does that matter? That's just a question.
Generally speaking, it's the mayor's prerogative to remove somebody from an official committee of the city. And cause is a very specific legal term. There's a bunch of case law regarding what constitutes cause. If you want to throw the city council consent in there, you certainly can. There's nothing wrong, but it's traditionally been the mayor's call on removal for cause.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I just wondering if if anyone else thought there was any reason, but I'm good with it as it sits.
I think typically a mayor would counsel with the council, consult with the council before he would do something like that. It would seem.
I think that's very true.
Any other thoughts or comments?
Mayor, I'll submit a motion if we're ready.
Do we need a motion before the opinion letter comes out, Craig?
No, you can go ahead because the opinion that Austin's asked me to refer to is going to apply to all official committees of the city.
Okay.
And what Austin said is true. They're now a public body, and they're going to have to abide by the open meetings law, publish an agenda, invite people in, and that sort of thing. One thing I might mention is the original draft of last week or 10 days ago had them meeting on Fridays. And I took that out intentionally because let's let that body adopt their meeting schedule on an annual basis and pick their own night without having to go back and amend an ordinance. Gives them a little more flexibility. If they want to meet on Friday night, that's up to them. That wouldn't work in my house, but so.
Okay.
Mention that.
Okay, so it sounds like Greg is ready to make a motion.
Yeah, I move that we approve ordinance 2020-21 Trail Committee as proposed.
Do we have a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Hey, we have a motion by Greg Gordon, seconded by Carla to accept the new ordinance as it's been presented. Any further discussion? Questions on the motion? Then let's go to a vote.
Lon Lot, aye.
Jessica Smewen,
Jessica Smewen, aye.
Greg Gordon,
Greg Gordon, aye.
and Carla Merrill.
Carla Merrill, aye.
Motion passes unanimously. All right. We're getting some things done. Okay, our next topic is something that I think Greg has spent a lot of time on. Greg, I appreciate your call last week regarding your findings there. Would you like to take a minute to tell us what you found? And actually, I guess I'll leave it to Austin to introduce it. And then Greg, if you could please tell us about your findings.
Yeah, well, I really don't have a lot to say, just other than the fact that, we've had ongoing constant complaints. This has been something that's been going on for some time now, and it's really kind of come to a head this year with the coronavirus and, the desire for people to get out and be outside. Sporting activities are just bigger than they ever have been. And so the parking issue particularly it has become something that's really come to a head this year. So that's all I have to introduce. And Greg, you can go ahead and take it away.
Sure. And were there any public comment or did that come later? Was there anything additional you wanted to read on that?
Yeah, I do have some comments. If you want to read those or share those, how do you want to do that?
I'd like to have Greg kind of give us a summary of his findings, and then we can.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mayor. So basically, looking at the situation there and potential solutions. So I went over and talked with Ted. We've probably spent an hour over there looking at the site. And looking at what made sense, also connected Chief Gwilliam, and of course had met with Principal Henshaw, as well as, the input of some members of the public, I think. So basically, the proposal here is two parts. One is to have no parking on the west side of Long Drive along the field. The reason for that, that it's the same thing that's done further south on Long Drive, where there's actually no parking on either side. One of the reasons is that the road goes 30 feet more narrow in that area. 5 feet more narrow, and it's down to 30 feet along the field. So it's quite tight to have parking on both sides. But to keep it open on the east side, which is both convenient and safe, at least quite a bit of parking there for soccer practice and tennis camps and clubs and drop off and pick up and those things. So that would stay open and available, and hopefully would should meet the needs most of the time, but except when there's a lot of games or multiple games going on. And then it tends to spill over. And oftentimes there is parking in the school parking lot. However, it's so much closer and more convenient in the neighborhood there. So that's the second part, is to not have no parking in the neighborhood, but rather just time restricted parking in, I think, what is just the few streets that are adjacent to there. Kind of is listed here. So the intent is in the afternoon, late afternoon, evening, weekdays, and morning and afternoon on Saturdays to have no parking during that time. This is actually what's been done. Apparently, it appears at several middle schools in the area, because they tend to, apparently they have the same situation. They tend to have not enough parking, and there's more convenient parking in the residential areas by the school or by the fields. So that's the intent there. Is also, there could still be parking at times, right, as needed for residential or for any other ordinary public use. But where there's this extraordinary parking demand at certain times, this would help push the patrons of the school sports events into the parking lot, and where that occasionally perhaps overfills, they could go to the elementary or perhaps the church lot there. So that's basically the two sections there. So no parking on the west side, and some restricted parking hours in the residential areas that really weren't built to be large public parking areas. So yeah. And I think if you look at that next slide, Austin, that has a little more, that's just the next one. So that's basically the proposal, Mayor. And it seemed like that would be a good balance and kind of address these challenges, while not saying, there's no parking ever in these neighborhoods, either for the public or for, residential usage. So.
Okay. And you felt like the principal was in agreement with those items?
Yeah, and in fact, this was really in line with his thinking as well. He basically said, he has little ability to, force people to park in the lot or where we want them to, but really encouraged us to say, he thought it made sense to keep, some parking available on the east edge, but, go ahead and restrict it, put up signs, paint curbs, and enforce it. And that would help him, to get his people to, park better and not cause problems in the area.
Chief Gwilliam, do you have any feedback on that?
Just a little bit. First of all, I appreciate Councilman Gordon's legwork on this. It seems that sometimes people are a bit more receptive to a city council person than they are to a police officer when they show up and make suggestions. So I do appreciate all of the work that he's put into this. It's been a lot. I mean, if you've seen his research and look at what he and Ted have done to this point, it is commendable in my opinion. He and I did speak about these parking restrictions and the suggestions. We are completely in favor of this. Our experience has been what this does is this gives us a little bit more teeth to be able to push people or get people to park where we want them to park. It's only going to take a week or two with some enforcement action and some citations for the word to get out to not park in the areas that are restricted. So luckily we are toward the end or at the end of the season of using those fields to the extent that they've been used. But that being said, starting next year, these are going to be very helpful to us, and I think that the residents in those neighborhoods over there are going to find that this will be much more palatable than what we've seen this year.
Good. Okay, so from an enforcement perspective, you feel comfortable that you'll be able to manage that?
Yes, with the signs and the painting of curbs, that makes it very easy. And there's no argument. There's either signs or there's not. There's no parking or there's parking or there's no parking. It's very easy to enforce with what we've got in front of us.
Very good. Chief Thompson, do you have any feedback on this issue? Is Reed still with us?
Yeah, sorry, I was just getting unmuted there, Mayor. Yeah, I'm in concert with what has been described there, and feel like that's a good option for us. Anytime we get below 20 feet of distance for us to travel presents some challenges. So breaking this up with some red curbing and what's been described will help us, I think, from a public safety response on the fire side or EMS side as well.
Okay, thank you. Shane, are there any issues that you can see in this?
The only thing I was going to bring up, I had put together a map showing all the red curb we have currently in the area. I think Austin was going to put that up there. It didn't make it in the packet, but we have quite a bit. I blew this out so it included Burgess Park and everything, just so everyone is aware. Greg, I think a lot of those people out there, have you talked with them, or are they okay with those restrictions in front of their homes? Like the 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturdays.
Yeah, I think they are in general. And basically, I think several have said they'd be okay with no parking at all. But I think when it came down to it, that wouldn't really be practical because everyone has visitors or deliveries or something at some point. So this is a little bit inconvenient, but not entirely, and still, gives them some, street parking. So yeah, I think there was broad support from the neighbors.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, those are my only comments there. So.
Okay. I'm not sure if this requires a vote.
Mayor, I've got a question or a comment.
Yes, Carla.
I'm wondering, instead of putting specific times, can you not put up signs instead that say no event parking, whether it's soccer or football, or be very specific? Because I guess what I'm worried about, these are big chunks of time that we are carving out. What if somebody's visiting somebody and they're there during games time? Are they going to get cited because they're there at the wrong time? There's no way for our police department to know what the purpose of that visitor is. Can we just not say, because it seems like when I've seen something like this similar, it's either no event parking, no soccer parking, no football parking, no, I think, what is it? Seven Peaks has, the neighborhood around there has signs that's very specific, as opposed to instead of times. Do we want to say it's specific to an activity or an event? Because that's what really the issue is. I don't know if this is going to solve their issue with morning practices during the summer that I know that they had issues with also.
Chief William, on that, I think
Yeah.
from my standpoint, I can see both sides of it. I totally agree with Carla's comments, and that's why I made the comment I did, or asked the question if the residents were in favor. If, it's kind of a trade-off situation where they realize that they'll be under the same restriction. Chief William, on the no event parking, does that put your officers in a situation where they don't know if it's an event parked car or not?
It does make it a bit more difficult, but it's not something that we can't overcome. There are a couple of neighborhoods that have that type of signage down by Lone Peak High School, and it's no event parking or no parking for school activities. I don't remember the exact wording, but it was to prevent this type of parking in their neighborhoods. Again, it does make it a bit more difficult if the time's not there, but it's certainly something that we can work through. Typically in those particular situations, if you're issuing a citation and somebody says, well, I'm not here for the event, well, you'd say, well, which house are you visiting? 9 times out of 10, they're not visiting the home, they're just trying to get out of the ticket. But if somebody comes out of the house and sees that we're issuing the citation, that's different if they're coming from a ball field. So it is workable. So we would be fine either way.
Yeah, I think Carla raises a good point. I just thought it was a kind of a matter of enforcement. I think, much of the year, these are pretty common times of usage. So it's fairly consistent. Obviously, during the winter, it wouldn't be. I guess you could do that. I just think it's, maybe less easily enforced and detected and and managed. However, if that's better and Chief Williams in favor, then I'm certainly not opposed as long as it's effective, right? Because I guess the challenge might be if people are parked out there and all day, and then they mix in with the soccer parking, and they're going to get a ticket, and then they're going to say we've ticketed them and they weren't there for a soccer game or something.
If we did event parking, that would also include anything that's happening during the evenings at the school. If there are concerts that are going on, or if there are productions of any type going on, that would include those as well. So, and that's targeting more of the residents of Alpine, because they're the ones that will be coming in the evenings to those particular concerts, as opposed to these individuals that are visiting from out of town. So there is a balance there. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, and we might want to call it sports event parking. I think when there's the symphony and the auditorium events, it seems like people are generally parked in the parking lot and they move out that way. I haven't seen very much issue there. I think it's primarily the sports practices and games.
I've actually seen parking overflow onto that neighborhood for Timberline events for the evenings. It depends. Not all the concerts do, but I feel like the big events, the parking lot definitely gets filled up. Some people end up going across the street to the church, but a lot of people just go and overfill into the neighborhood. But also we have to keep in mind, our city streets aren't just for transportation. It's also overflow parking. It really is. Unless we're willing to provide parking for every single venue and hold every single public building accountable for those parking spaces, we as a city need to be willing and be flexible enough to provide that parking. Maybe the solution is limit the number of fields that you're gonna, and that's something that you would need to work with the school and say, hey, instead of leasing 3 fields or 4 football fields, can you only lease 2? This will help with our parking situation. I don't know. I get it. It's just unattainable for everyone. The citizens aren't happy. But I mean, this is the right time to do it. We're going to be in between seasons. It's before anybody's schedule gets put out there. It's definitely the right time to come up with the solution. I just don't know if, and I appreciate all the work that you've done. And it seems like, yes, this would totally target it. But are we also overlooking most of the school events start at 7 p.m. at Timberline that I know of? That's going to overlap from 4 to 8 p.m. Do you know what I mean? Do we want to, and then if something starts at 7, most people are going to try to get there by 6:30 to get a good seat if they're going to get there early. And then a lot of people that will be parking after, at 7 will be flowing into the neighborhood. I think, I don't know. I honestly don't know what the best solution is. Obviously, there's a problem. So Greg, as far as is there a reason why you went all the way to 8 instead of 7?
It looked like that's kind of when practices normally end. I'm not sure, I'm not totally sure, but that's normally when most practices end. And sometimes they go a little later than that, but I think in most cases that's more for pickup and so on. I do think for the auditorium events, they might, go over to the church, or there is some street parking out in front of the school, which is good. And of course, it actually is quite a lot of cars along the field there that are available. I think it's something like, I didn't count, but I'm sure there's like at least 30 spots there beyond the tennis parking. So I don't think that's probably where the public would push out to, is down that far north for, say, the evening auditorium events or in building events. I think they may go out towards the church or on, that south part of Long Drive or wherever.
So let me try to understand the situation. So they have practices. So these are parents that are waiting for their kids while they're at practice, or
Pickups.
is it's what, 15-20 minutes for pickups and drop-offs? Is that really, are we going to put signs up and down our streets for that? I'm just trying to understand.
But no, it's a good point. I think what happens is there are sometimes multiple soccer games, and it's not so much practice or ultimate frisbee practice. Mostly, I think you have a few parents there waiting and coaches and so on. And there's adequate parking, along the one side of the road or the tennis lot there. But when there are games, I think that's when it would spill in, into neighborhoods and so on. And those could be, I guess, any night without knowing their schedule or how it might change for some of, the weeknight soccer or other events, both, frisbee or ultimate or tennis or other events.
So, Greg, I had a question for you. We talked about, and I think we talked about it in our last meeting as well, the number of games that are going on there at a given time. And I had to step away for a minute, so I apologize if I'm redundant in this question, but it seemed like we are hosting an awful lot of games at one time at the school, and that by reducing those games, we could also help reduce the parking issue. Did you give some time to that?
Not in particular, and I think that's exactly right. I think if it went down to a more standard, and it's particularly the football games on Saturday where things get really congested. If it went down to 2, and they could still have maybe even 4 time slots a day and go 10, 11 weeks a year like they did this season. That they should have sufficient parking available to support that pretty much. But I think at the end of the day, if the parking over in the neighborhood and along Long Drive is so much closer than the parking lot, that's what will always fill up first. And so I think that's the challenge. I think when we go ahead and control some of that or limit some of that, then I think it's more clear that we've done our part, and they can. And we'll work with them. The season just ended on Saturday, so it's a good time to address it for next season now with the school and district and scheduling for next year.
So Greg, would you be amenable to, number one, work with the school to limit the number of fields that they are leasing or renting out to this sporting entities? But instead of maybe a time, just, you can do a blanket statement, and that it will allow school events and ordinary citizens to be able to use and park on those streets. Would you be okay to just say no sport event parking?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, if that's reasonable and effective, I think that's fine. I think it, and as you say, in some ways that has, some key benefits. So that may be a better plan. And, and if we find that this isn't practical or doesn't work for some reason, we could maybe just adjust in the future. But I think that could be a good idea. Just say no sport event parking, and hopefully that's easily, enforceable and would be adhered to.
Yeah, that seems like a good fallback position. And with the reduction in games, people and a little bit of a push, people would fill the parking lot and not need a whole lot of overflow.
I think what we need to keep in mind, it seems like the overflow, where it seems like there's excessive parking, is when there's an overlap. You've got, games are scheduled pretty tightly, right? They're trying to fit as many games as possible to make it economical for that organization. But what you have is, let's say games, on the hour, every hour, you're going to have the other teams come in early, come in late. There's always going to be overlap and overflow. Do we have enough? I have no idea. I'm sure we do, but would Timberline have enough parking to accommodate that overlap? Or do they need to work on scheduling on top of limiting the number of fields?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the soccer events, they should have enough. For football, there is that overlap, which, it should be pretty close. But that should be manageable. And, if they go to 2, but you're right. And I looked and almost every field, and the way they schedule the games are 90-minute blocks. So that does push some overlap. You'd have to go probably, I don't know, at least 30 or 60 minutes further to avoid the overlap, I think. So that's a challenge with football. But I think if they did too, that would surely be a lot better with some, parking limitations there. And if we could get it down to 2, I think probably the problem should, largely or almost entirely dissipate.
Was this something we were going to be talking about in December with the school district in their that breakfast meeting that we're going to talk about this?
Yeah, that was my. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think some. I think it'd be great to have things worked out with the principal before then. I think there's some other things we can approach at the district level in December. Approach them with, for example, with the newer schools that they build like this one, they put more parking at the rear of the building. That came right from Rob Smith, the assistant administrator. He came up with that on his own and said, well, I can see an issue right here compared to what we built today. And he didn't rule that out as a possibility. He mentioned someone in their administration that he would talk to about that. So we can prime him with that question, and he can maybe come prepared at that December meeting.
Wait, Shane, are you saying that the district is amenable for a request for an additional parking in the back of Timberline?
He didn't say yes, didn't say no, but Rob said additional parking that we have at the newer schools that we build, that would help the situation. So, and there, it appears that there is room that they could do that.
Okay,
that's
what I heard.
Building everything.
Yeah, that's kind of what I heard too, Carla. And it sounds like there's some openness to it, but not a commitment.
I can't commit them to it, so I'd like to be able to.
And so what I understand from the district with planning and scheduling the fields and renting them out, that's up to the principals. The district sets the rate, and then the rest is up to the principals. So, you know, Greg, I think if you will be the front man and work with Timberline on scheduling and reducing the number of fields, I think that will help greatly. And then, but Shane, with the map that you showed, we already have all those sidewalks painted red, correct?
We have a lot of red
Curbs, I
curb
mean.
over there. I just wanted to make sure the council was aware of what we had.
And then Chief, are we enforcing the red curb along Long Drive near Timberline Middle School during the events?
We have gone over there and issued citations, and it takes 2 or 3 and then they disperse. But there have been enforcement, but probably not to the degree that it could have been.
I think if there's a concerted effort to do it at the beginning of the season, I think word gets around to the parents, hey, you know, don't park there. I feel like, you know, when I was in the soccer and football and all of that, word spread pretty quickly, if long as that happened right at the beginning of the season.
I agree.
And I think there's, based on what Greg had proposed, there's just really a small amount of new red curb, kind of on the north end there, up by Dally Drive and maybe some corners. So mostly signage.
So going to the point of timing on enforcement and making sure that the point is made early in the season, I guess soccer is probably the first sport that kicks in the spring, right? Do we have if we are aware of that start date and we've got law enforcement out there, the opening, well, I guess it'd start with the practices, but certainly the games in the first part of the season, I think that would be important. So can we make sure that that Brian and his people are aware of what that first date is in the beginning of the season?
Yeah, and on top of that, I'd suggest we start with the top of these organizations, contact their leadership, find out who they are, and then they can get this information down through their different teams.
If we can get contact information for the individuals that are heading the organization, we'd be happy to send a letter from the police department letting them know of our plan to enforce the parking.
Is it La Roca that's practicing at Timberline now, or
Yes.
is it a different team?
Right.
It's La Roca.
Okay, Mayor, obviously we're going to need to have clear and visible signage on this, very, very clear with something. And I like Carla's direction. I do sincerely appreciate Greg's efforts on this, really good. But to read no sport event parking violators will be cited. Very clear that something is going to happen if they're there parking for that event.
Yeah, I guess one of the things I've seen people do over near my house at Smooth Canyon is you'll get people who they'll be even park in the red zone, but stay in their car, assuming that the fact that they're in their car excuses them from breaking the parking laws. And so I would just say my forecast is that there'll be plenty of those people who still ignore the signage. They'll line up because they're sitting in their car waiting for the kid to stop to end practice. Chief, what do you do in that situation? Do you ask them to move their car, or do you cite them?
We do ask them to move. There is language. I'd have to go back and look at the parking language in the state code, but it does say parking or standing, and that the standing was to address individuals that were described as how you are parked as you described, Mayor. They're in their vehicles standing is how it's defined. but they're just waiting there, either watching the game or I'd have to go back and look at the state code and see exactly how it's worded, but parking or standing would be, could be some language that we could use.
Yeah, I would suggest that the motion include that language or at least a reference to the codes that use that language so that we don't have that as an excuse.
Chief
And
William,
that is a huge problem. We see that every day on Main Street in the afternoon when the school gets out. I know it's a big problem in Burgess Park. When the school gets out, parents waiting or practice gets over.
Right.
It is an issue.
And what I hear happens is it's as much a problem of sort of double parking, but what's proposed here is we leave the east side along the field there as available parking. So that lets parents go way down, or there's 25 spots in the tennis lot. But kind of the intent there is to make it also a little safer by not, having people crossing the road there as people are coming and going in a narrow, driving corridor there. But hopefully that should allow for some pickup. They might have to drive down further, but and that is ideally something that is a benefit to the school and the teams, that keeps it convenient for them for drop off and pickup. But and it might need to be adjusted along with anything else as things progress in the future.
Greg, and I'd just like to echo thank yous to you for the research and effort you put into this. Really nice that you took it by the horns and tackled it. Thank you. Okay, we have some sample language for a motion. If anybody's prepared to make that motion, we'd entertain it now. That's the most silence of our meetings, by the way.
And I guess the question, what was the feeling? I guess I'll go ahead. I move to approve the proposed plan to address parking at Timberline Middle School on the north, near the sports field, as proposed, with the amendment to change timed parking to no sports event parking instead. That's all.
Okay, so we have a motion by Greg Gordon. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Okay, second by Jessica Muin. Just want to make sure, Bonnie, did you get that motion completely on the record?
The last part is the amendment to this, did you say signage or Greg?
Greg, do you want to
to the timed amendment to the timed parking signage from hours to instead say no sports event parking.
I got it.
Okay, great. All right, further questions on the motion?
It'd just be assumed then that violators will be cited. We don't need to say that in the motion. I will, because maybe we do need to, simply because the proposed doesn't talk about citation.
I think if you just mentioned something that about enforcement action, that would cover it. And then I can work with Shane or whomever about what exactly is going to be on the signage, so people are perfectly clear and understand what's acceptable and what's not.
Okay, Greg, would you modify that slightly then to include enforcement?
Yes, yeah, agreed. And did you have proposed language, Lon? And that violators will be subject to citation and law enforcement.
If you were to say we're going to be subject to enforcement action, I think that would cover citations, and if a vehicle needs to be removed because if Chief Thompson's trying to get his apparatus in and out of there, we can certainly have those removed. We can already do that in state law, but I would suggest you probably put it in this one. Just enforcement action would cover both of those.
Yeah, let's make it short and
so
sweet.
I'll modify.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I'll modify my motion to say, and that violators will be subject to enforcement.
Action. Enforcement
Okay.
action.
Enforcement action. Yes. Thank you.
Okay, and Carla, I'm sorry, Jessica, are you okay with that language?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion on the table, motion by Greg, seconded by Jessica. Any further question on the motion? All in favor, beginning with Carla.
Carla Merrill, aye.
Lon,
Lon Lot, aye.
Jessica,
Jessica Smuin, aye.
and Greg.
Greg Gordon, aye.
Okay, unanimous. Motion passes. Thank you again for your work, Greg. Thanks for everyone for your input. We've got the lighting ordinance, another tabled item from a
Hey,
previous.
Mayor,
Yes.
real quick, just for total clarity for ordering signs, we'll work with Chief for sure. The timing be included or not?
Shane, sorry, I don't know about,
sports
you're kind
event parking.
can everybody hear Shane okay? Because I cannot. Yeah, Shane, for some reason,
It's breaking up.
your internet is dragging a little bit. You there, Shane?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear that. Are you there?
Can you hear me, Troy?
I can hear you. But whatever you tried to say a moment ago was kind of distorted by the internet. I think we must have a signal issue.
Okay, sorry about that.
No, that's okay. If you might just restate.
Yeah, my question was just, are we including the times on the sign or just no sports event parking?
I think the motion
without
was
times?
no sports event parking without the times. Is that correct?
That's what I thought. I just wanted to make 100% sure.
Okay. Greg, is that what you meant
That
to?
was my understanding.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. That was my understanding. Thanks.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right. Once again, we're going to review the lighting discussion that we had in our last meeting and table it for this meeting. Austin?
Yeah, so we've gone ahead and reworked that language. The biggest issue that came up and the reason why it was kind of tabled is it was felt that there needed to be some kind of unit of measurement. And so what we've done is gone ahead and put together this new language here with a unit of measurement. So, and we've also modified the language. So I guess probably the easiest way to go through this would just be to read through it and go over highlight the changes. So outdoor lighting, sports courts, all lighting shall be shielded and directed to illuminate only the area of play. So that was just help clarify that it's illuminating the area of play and not someone's yard, their house, etc. Next sentence was also revised. Light trespass onto an adjacent property or public right-of-way is prohibited. And then we go on. So, the question comes, well, how do we measure that? How do we enforce that? And that's where the next sentence comes in. Subject to the foregoing, the maximum allowed vertical illuminance at any point on the plane of the property line is 0.1 foot candles. Lighting, and then we go on to have the hours. So lighting is permitted from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. or 30 minutes after use of the court ceases, whichever is earlier. So this 0.1 foot candles is something that we looked at other cities, how they measure this, what they've done, and that seemed to be the best unit of measurement. That's something that we could. They have a device that you can stand there and get a measurement, and so we felt like that was something that was workable. That we can make a measurement. So so that covers sports courts. Then item B, residences and accessory structures. So this language was also kind of modified to be a little bit more clear here. So all lighting fixtures shall be fully shielded and directed downward. Light trespass onto adjacent property or public right-of-way is prohibited, subject to the foregoing. And then again, the foot candles is mentioned. And then finally, we've reworked how holiday lighting is addressed. Holiday lighting may be displayed from November 15th to March 15th and is exempt from restrictions in this section. It was decided to remove the language based after listening to the discussion and going through the minutes of the last meeting. It was decided it'd probably be better to just eliminate a light curfew so that we could have porch lights, so that we could have security lighting, so that we could have all those different kind of landscape lighting that most people feel is appropriate. And so by having a unit of measurement, we can say, yeah, you can have as many lights as you want in theory, but until you reach that point where your light is trespassing onto the neighbor's property. And so this is kind of what we've thrown together. Where it's here for your reaction. We're not sure. We're just kind of took a stab at this, and hopefully this is kind of what the council was looking after that discussion that we had in the last meeting.
So I've got a question. What is 0.1 foot candles equivalent to? Like what? I have no point of reference. Like what would that be?
And Carla, in addition to that, I would ask, how would somebody who is designing their lighting on their property come to the conclusion that they were compliant?
Yeah, so the way, to answer your questions, one, they would have to figure, most likely if it was a new house, you'd probably have to get a photometric plan, which would show what kind of lights you have, how powerful those lights are, and how far those lights are going, and which areas are being illuminated by those lights. So that would take into consideration the angle of the lights, the brightness of the lights, the type of light, etc. What is 0.1 foot candles? I'm not a light expert, so I can't. I'm not very good. I wouldn't be the one best to explain that to you. That unit of measurement was selected by Steve Doxey, one of our city attorneys. He felt like that. He has a lot of experience, over 20 years of experience working in other cities, and he felt that was the best unit of measurement. There are lumens that you see a lot of the time, but that's not something that's easily measurable from a point on the ground. It's used to identify certain types of light bulbs and things like that, but when it comes to actually measuring it, and again, I'm not a light expert, but foot candles is unit of measurement that said.
Austin, can I pipe in a second?
Sure.
Carla, this is what it says. Full daylight typically equals about 1,000 foot candles, while an overcast day would only have 100 foot candles of light. Twilight produces just 1 foot candle, while the night of it with a full moon has 0.01 foot candles. So in your question, how does it reference? That's sort of what you would see.
I don't know.
That's
could be
useful to
bright.
understand. I've seen 1 or 0.1 foot candles used for other cities, but I also read that this is normally measured in a laboratory, so it may be kind of hard to measure. I tried to calculate it. It looked like it was really low, like a 3 lumens or like a lumen or something. It's kind of equivalent, just very, very minimal.
it feels a little complex. The only thing I would worry about is somebody who may fully intend on being compliant, but they're not sure quite how to get there. When we're measuring that way, I mean, that may be true no matter how we put it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess one of the questions oh, go ahead, Greg.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Mayor. I was just going to say I had a bit of a concern with the term all lighting is directed downward, and I think that makes a lot of sense for soffit lighting and maybe certain types. But this seems to prohibit any spotlights, even temporary or sort of pathway lights that are on posts or the garage lights because I don't know if that's considered shielded. So that was the concern. It seemed like, most homes might have lights around their garage, about 7 feet up. And it looks like this, would not allow for that.
Yeah.
Mayor, if I may, just to Greg's point and everyone's point, I guess, on the fact that this is over technical. If you look at the majority of cities, they actually don't provide a unit of measurement. So the cities that really do it are the ones that are seeking dark sky compliance. And so for obvious reasons, it's just very technical. And so a lot of cities, for example, Highland, which is our neighbor, they just say light shall be shielded and directed away from your neighbors. That's all they do. They don't have a unit of measurement. And so I don't know if there's an easy way to do a unit of measurement. But this is what the language that our attorney came up with.
Well, I guess you got to either have a unit of measurement or a timing issue. If you're going to really govern it, how brightly things are lit. I guess one of the things I'd be concerned about without a time limit is there are buildings that have downward lighting that illuminate the building so brightly that it might look cool until about 10 o'clock at night, but at 4 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't look so cool to the neighbors, but it's still permitted, at least under this language. So I guess in my mind, you have control over both the timing of brightly lit buildings, homes, and how brightly they can be lit. I think we're accomplishing part of that here, but it still leaves some room for people to be pretty bright into the middle of the night.
Mayor, I was also, we also, it looks like, removed any mention of motion lights, landscape lighting. I think we should maybe have an allowance if it's not otherwise in the text for lighting a flag, which is, relatively rare, but if people fly a flag at night and keep a light on it. And I think the 11 p.m. on Sport Court is livable. I think 10:30 is would be a little better. I think Highlands is 10. But on the holiday lighting, I don't know if it necessarily needs to go to March 15. I'd point out, and I know we only have a few sort of Indians who are often Hindu and celebrate Diwali, but they often put up what we consider Christmas lights for the Festival of Lights, and that's kind of late October to kind of mid-November. But that's a religious observance for them that we might want to accommodate, in there.
That was something that I wanted to talk about as well, Greg, is the holiday lighting. Although I think it can be done in poor taste, I think for the most part, holiday lighting is a welcome sight. November 15th seems a little bit late to start as your earliest starting point to me. I've seen people already displaying their Christmas lights, right now, and we're prior to that point. How does everybody else feel about the holiday lighting piece of it? Lon, do you have any thoughts?
No, I don't. I don't care. I personally on this, I think I'm for going forward with Section A, the sports court thing, but I'm still opposed to some of the stuff on B, as far as I don't know that it's a big problem. That's just my opinion.
Are you talking about the residence and accessory structures, Lon? You don't feel like that's an issue?
Yeah, I don't know how you can control any of it, really. It just seems to be something we can't seem to put a quantifiable reason of enforcement on some of it. Yeah, things are just too bright, but how do we really go backwards? And I know that some of the stuff, dark sky things, you could go forward, but how do you retrofit everybody else who's there? And especially downward lighting, most of the porch lights even are in fixtures that aren't downward lighting. They're just there. So it's, again, to Greg's point, things on garages, on the sconces, and it just, there's some things are downward facing, but most of the garage lights have those pretty carriage type lamps that are outward lighting. So it's just really hard for me to see how we can wrap my head around trying to create some kind of ordinance that restricts and then we can have enforceable on that. That's just still a hard one. The sports court one to me is a little more easy, I think.
Yeah. How many would agree, or is there anybody that would disagree that the sports court seems to be pretty straightforward and acceptable? Is there anybody who doesn't feel that way?
I agree with the sports court wording. I think it solves some problems and future problems. I also agree that it's hard to put parameters around the residential.
Yeah. So I would say that I'm in agreement with A as well. My feeling is that with B, that there are some things we could still do. I don't feel like just throwing up my hands and giving up because it might be hard to enforce or it might be hard to define. I think as we work through it, we should be able to come up with some parameters that are enforceable, that are palatable to the community. Because I think, and I agree with everything you said, Lon, because I have the carriage lights on my garage. And when I replace them, which is hopefully soon, I was planning on doing the same style of light. So, that does seem a little bit restrictive. However, I do think that we have issues around town, and they seem to be increasing, not decreasing, where the illumination of our houses, garages, accessory buildings, and so forth seems to be excessive and seems to go into the night and does seem to cause a problem for neighbors. Because even though it may not cast light, measurable light on the neighbor's yard, it's still a bright spot that it makes it hard to sleep, makes it hard to feel like it's nighttime for a neighbor that may live close or within the beam of that light. So I don't think I would want to just give up on item B. Carla, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I've got a question. Shane, is there a way to measure this? Is there an apparatus or a device that says, yes, you are definitely 0.1 foot candle, you're over that limit?
There is a device.
My understanding is there are light meters that can measure this.
Okay.
As Austin said, starting out, you would really need a photometric design.
Right.
So they knew what kind of light they're dealing with. So I don't know if architects are trained to do that, or if you really need a lighting specialist, someone to have to go find a lighting specialist to provide another sheet in their set of building plans, or how that would be approached.
Those meters are sold by camera shops and all sorts of lighting facilities. They're not hard to come by. I don't think it's too much to ask to have somebody comply with those, with certain guidelines when they're building. Anybody else want to jump in?
Mayor, I'd agree. I mean, I think the sport court, looks good and is pretty reasonable. I think we could probably do more work on B. Yeah, I definitely think we need to do something here. I just don't. I don't think we're quite there. Probably need another round of, or two of work on trying to find the right fit for Alpine.
I would agree. Craig, I see you raising your hand.
Yeah, I have a question. Maybe our title, sport court, is too narrow. It maybe ought to read sport court, tennis court, or other similar recreational courts. Sport court is really a trade name.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Austin, can we adjust that to Craig's point?
Yes, yeah, that can be easily adjusted.
Okay.
Would sports court be sufficient to encapsulate it? Oh, that's what you said. It is a sport court, right? Okay. Maybe it's a court used for sports.
Yeah, I think Craig pointed out accurately that sports court is a trademark and would probably be inappropriate to have in our ordinance. Just a description of all potential courts. So it sounds like I'm hearing, at least from one or two others, that we're okay with the item A. It's B where we start running into a little bit of confusion, and maybe we can work through that and get a little bit more defined and user friendly. So it seems like a motion to table again to continue to refine that language would be appropriate right now.
I guess for me, I need to have a better understanding of what exactly that's saying. Like you said, on garages, our carriage lights, are they considered covered? And to a certain extent they are. I'm not exactly sure, what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Is it considered covered if they're encased in glass? Is it considered covered if they have a solid non-transparent? Do you know what I mean? I'm not exactly sure what the extent of the language
it seems like this is kind of pointed toward just casting the light downward, when in the reality is, I would say the vast majority of lighting casts outward. And so I think that's important to really define what is this trying to accomplish? And if it's shielded, which direction should it be shielded? Do we only want downward casting light, or do we want lower lumens at outward casting light? I think those are all valid things to look at as we work through this.
Well, and if it's not downward casting, but it's not trespassing on your neighbor, then what is the negative impact?
Yeah. And there are all sorts of different, I think this is all over the spectrum. For example, we have neighbors who put in new LED lights, that really bright, cold light. And where we used to have kind of a dark, dimly lit area where they were using incandescents, now we have this beacon, and it's really bright. Is that something that, we should be regulating? I don't know. Maybe it isn't. But something I think you need to consider is, when you cast light that may not trespass, it still creates a beacon type landmark that may be hard to deal with for a neighbor. What you said is true, though, Lon. It's tough to pin that down. So my recommendation to the council would be to maybe push this out to a future meeting with renewed focus on item B.
But to renew the focus on item B, I think we need to state the goal.
Yeah.
And then we can come up with a framework around that. So do we have a stated goal?
Yeah, I guess if I were to put it in words, it probably wouldn't be very fluid, but it would have something to do with creating lighting that was obtrusive to neighbors and those beyond the property line. But I have no idea how to define that.
Well, I feel like our lawyers did that. If this is a unit of measurement that's clearly definable and it's an industry standard, just because we don't understand it, it doesn't mean that it's not a stand. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like,
Fair.
yeah, I don't know.
No, I think that's fair, Carla. I mean, maybe it is right in front of us. We're a little bit hung up on the word, our understanding of it. Here's what I do know. That it is measurable. It is, the instrument to measure is not expensive. You know, I've purchased them in the past for $200 to $300. So it's something that would be easy to equip our inspector with, and our code enforcement officer.
And then striking the whole sentence about holiday lighting. I don't know if we need to call that out. Some people like to leave their cute lights on all summer long.
And typically holiday lighting is one of the culprits, in my opinion.
Right.
There's a few that I don't love.
What I think the comment that I've heard from public about holiday lighting is, and I think it's fine if people were to turn them on the 4th of July, red, white, and blue. I think that's great too, right? But if it's very bright, they keep it on late into the night, and you know, and maybe if it's just like you know, rapid flashing, that can be disturbing to neighbors, right? So, and maybe it's just simply that, you know, that might be something to look at, you know, is just rapid flashing lights, which I think several cities have or, you know, language on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I also think that the timing may get us into a little bit of trouble because we're defining holiday lighting as, you know, a certain time period in the year, which would imply, you know, only protecting certain holidays, and that could be seen, I think, as discriminatory. You know, if somebody has a religious holiday in May or June, we're saying that according to this, at least, we don't. Those would be outside the ordinance.
So Troy, what I'm hearing you say is on part B where it says holiday lighting you could just say holiday lighting and then take out that whole section, say is exempt from the restrictions in the section. That would work. Or you could just take holiday lighting out, period. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's, if you take the dates out of it, it eliminates anybody or any potential for discrimination, I think. Craig, do you have an opinion on that?
You guys are talking about an individual that if I turn the lights off in my office, you would see lights flashing on and off because I have a computer that is being programmed to turn my Christmas lights on and off to music. It goes with about 20,000 lights outside. So you were really talking to the wrong person. I was just looking at my iPad. I was going to see if I've got a video of the lights. I was going to send it. You know, I live in Daybreak, and the HOA says you can't turn them on till November 15th. If you came to my house tonight and looked across the street, in my house and the neighbor's house, the lights are on. We do it for a couple of reasons. We can't stand our HOA, so we just defy them. I'll give you some history on that sometime. But the point is, my neighbors you know, Shane, I'll send you this picture of the lights in my house.
Okay.
And you can share it. Holiday lighting, I mean, I've got a breezeway between my house and my garage. I change the lights depending on the season. I just put the red and green ones up last weekend. I had purple and orange up for Halloween. And where does it go? I mean, we can overregulate what it is. And fortunately, my neighbors love what I do, or I could be in problems. So Shane, if once you get that, I personally, I don't think holiday lighting, if you got Griswold coming out, that's maybe a problem. But I got after Steve and I, when we discussed the ordinance in the office, I said, why are we putting this in there? And he said, we just thought we would. And I thought, well, okay, let's have a discussion about that. And so if you're asking for policy, take it out. If you're asking if it's legal, yes, you could do it. So,
Yeah.
Well, Mayor, if we want some direction on that, I would suggest that we go ahead on item A, tennis court, sports court, or the outdoor court type lighting, that we address that title to be more inclusive, as Craig has suggested, and even move forward with something like that one right now, and try to, again, I just still cannot wrap my head around how we can really identify item B as something that that we can deal with. I just don't know. That is just really hard for me to embrace.
So Lon, I agree with much of what you said, except for the end. I feel like we should go forward with item A. This is my opinion. The council will vote according to desires, but I think item B just requires more work. I think we could eliminate holiday lighting from it and probably simplify our effort. But I don't think, my opinion is that we shouldn't give up because it's complicated. We should just
Okay, I'm not saying you give up. I say we move forward and then continue the process on item B and get something done via the sports court thing, and not let that be hung up by the confusion and issues on item B.
I agree, Lon.
Mayor, may I interject?
I agree.
Yes, please.
Yeah, this is Fraser Bullock, and I happen to own a tennis court that does have lights on it. And I agree that the light should be downward directed, and there should be a time limit at night, 10:30 or whatever is appropriate. I would double check the lumen measure, because a parking lot, or is the foot candle measure, because a parking lot has 10. And so if you're a 0.1, I would do a little more research in terms of what courts actually have before approving that element. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you, Fraser.
Yeah, Fraser. I think what that measurement is if it's broadcasting on someone else's property, it can't be more than that 0.1. Doesn't mean that it's in your court. It means that it's on their property.
And I would make that language, and that's fine then. I would just make sure that language is clear. Because when I read it, I couldn't quite tell that.
Okay, that's a good point.
Thank you, Fraser. Craig, did you have something else?
It says on the plane of the property line. So that's what I understood. What Lon said was, on your own property, you can blast as much as you want directly downward onto the playing surface. But on the plane of your property, once it bleeds out to that, then it can't bleed out more than 0.1 foot candles.
That was the intent.
Perfect. I stand corrected.
Thank you. Okay, is someone prepared to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion then. And Craig, help me real quick. You made the comment of tennis courts, and how did you word that? That identifying factor on item A, not
I
just
said-
sports court.
You can
Said sport court, tennis court, or other similar recreational courts or facilities.
Kind of pulls it all in.
Yeah, because sport court is a trademark.
Mhm.
You could just say sports related courts.
You could
That
do
was
that.
shorter.
Yeah,
Very good.
Is that okay? All right, I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 20, ordinance 2020-19, outdoor lighting with the following exceptions, that item 3, outdoor lighting A, be entitled, oh my goodness, I didn't write that down. Carla, what did you say?
sports related court.
Sports related courts, and that we eliminate item B on this ordinance.
Instead of, do you want to just table it?
Yeah.
Oh, can't we just make another ordinance or add to the ordinance in the future instead of tabling that one? Or what you're saying, Carla, well, so I would say that's my motion. If you want to, anyone wants to second it, that's fine. And then you, Carla, can tell me as far as tabling the whole thing. Is that what you're saying?
Carla, you're muted.
So no, I support your motion for the outdoor lighting for sports related courts, but then for part B on the residences and accessory structures, and the corresponding or the corollaries, table those until further development.
Is it the same thing? I mean,
I think the way you motioned, Lon, it actually creates an ordinance that only includes item A. Whereas I think what Carla is suggesting is that we approve item A within the ordinance, but we leave it open to develop item B, so that it is an all-encompassing lighting ordinance, as opposed to having two separate lighting ordinances. Is that right, Carla?
Correct. That we're acknowledging that we may or may not need an ordinance for residencies or accessory structures, but at this time, we're not ready to approve or disapprove anything, but that we feel that there's definitely room for more discussion.
okay. Okay, so
Would you like to re-motion?
yeah,
Lon?
I'll make a motion that we approve ordinance number 2020-19 outdoor lighting with the following conditions: that item 3, outdoor lighting, section A, be called sports related courts, and that item B be tabled for further discussion.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion?
I'll
I'll
second it.
second.
Okay, I think Carla was the first to second. Okay, so we have a motion by Lon, seconded by Carla. And do we have any further discussion on that or any questions? All right, let's put it to a vote. Greg?
Greg Gordon, aye.
Okay, Jessica,
Jessica Smuin, aye.
Lon,
Lon Lot, aye.
Carla.
Carla Merrill, I.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously, so we will have a discussion on item B in a future meeting. Thank you, everybody. Last on our list is, hang on, just sorry, I gotta reopen this. Approval for non-manned information booth at 3 Falls. Let's see, Carla, would you like to introduce this topic? I didn't warn you in advance that you'd be asked to do that, so I apologize.
No, you're fine. This came to be because I've had, it came up in conversation. People have contacted me that they are being told by the people in the security shack that, they're just flat out told that they can't go up there, and it's not consistent. Some people I've heard that, yeah, they have been allowed to go up there, but if they stayed there too long, they would be followed and asked to leave. There's a lot of variations of these stories. My daughter has had one that was very unpalatable to, I feel like, to any parent. And even though if it was a one-off, but it just made me wonder, how many more people is this really happening to? And so I, went out looking and just asking around, who's had similar experiences. And just in the couple hours that I've had today, I've had people reach out to me, since the summer, June, July, August, September, some, as late as, I think, October was the last incident where they were either told, one, that, that the street was private property. And I think some of it might be an issue of, I had a friend who was hiking with her niece and started out at the trailhead at the bottom, and her niece got a huge blister. And instead of going back on the trail, she thought it would be shorter to get back on the road to get back to her car because her foot, her niece's foot was hurting. I guess the blister had popped by then. And that she was stopped and told that she couldn't get off the trail, that she needed to go back on the trail. And, there's just things like that. And I feel like, and even in reaching out to various people, because my goal in reaching out to people was that I have heard a lot of stories, but most of it was from friends of friends or whatnot. I've had maybe personal encounters and people that I know, maybe in the 5 to 10 range, but I wanted to know what the other experiences were and not just hear by hearsay. And, the overwhelming response I got was, number one, I was told it was private property. I'm like, who told you that? Some of them, it was by either the security guards or from their friends that have had the similar experience. My personal opinion is those are city streets. And to me, it just seems so unreasonable to have a structure in the middle of a street, in the middle of a public city street. I don't understand that at all. Because if we're going to approve that, then I'd like to request one in front of my house and stop everyone that comes by and ask them why they were going beyond my house. It's unfathomable to me that we're allowing this, and that we're allowing our own citizens to be prevented from just driving around. My daughter is a fairly new driver, and I suggested that she drive up there because there isn't as much traffic, that she wouldn't be as scared. I'm like, yeah, she's totally excited about having her car, wanted to go up there. And it's just unfortunate that, she's having experiences that are less than pleasant. And I'm not going to go into the details of her experience because I just don't think it's appropriate at a city meeting. But I feel that, and I forwarded some of the responses that I got from citizens to Austin that, forwarded me, and it's just a handful that I've gotten. But I'm sure there's more. For every response that I've gotten, I'm sure there's at least 10 more that haven't had the similar. experience. And because of that, I just feel like, I don't know. I know that Councilman Thielen has had experiences being stopped at the information booth. And I know, I think Jessica has a story to share, and I believe even Greg has an experience that he can share, or, you know, he's had neighbors share experiences with him. I don't think it's a one-off, and I don't think it's anything that's uncommon. And I think, Troy, you had the same thing. And because of that, I feel that, you know, that we don't, I don't know why we as a city are supporting a man booth in the middle of a city street. I guess that's my sense of confusion and for the reason for this agenda item.
That's the most basic question, Carla, that I think is spot on. Is, you know, why does the city have a booth that is manned by non-city employees regulating, or at least attempting to regulate, traffic on a public street? And to your point, yes, I've had personal experiences. I was stopped at that shack, and this goes back a little ways. This was last spring, and I know that we've had letter exchanges with the developer and a commitment to resolving that situation. And I have not been stopped since. But I have a client who I was having lunch with, who is a mountain biker, and we were talking about the trails in the area. When I mentioned the trails up there, he said, "Well, wait, you can't go up there because it's a private area." And I said, "No, it's not. But who told you that?" And he went on to share an experience he had when he was stopped and told it was private. And I'm familiar with other situations like it. I actually ran into an elderly couple from Alpine, who were up on the trail hiking, and they felt like they had to trespass to get up to the trail, which was not the case. And so when I informed them that it was a completely open area, that was a pleasant surprise to them, but they didn't know that until it was, until somebody explained it. I think the implication is that there's a shack there which authorizes people to stop traffic, and implies, at the very least, it implies that it's a private area. And so I have had those experiences, and I know people who have, and it doesn't seem to be a one-off in the least. It seems to be fairly common.
May
Jessica,
I comment on this, Mr. Mayor?
Fraser, I'd love to have you do that. If you could just wait for a moment. I'm going to have
Okay.
the council members provide comment, and then I would like you to respond as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jessica, did you have anything that you would like to mention?
Similar experience. Early in the summer, we had been stopped and told we couldn't go up. And then after the letter was written, we had gone up again in mid-August, just driving through. And we drove through the entrance. But as we were up there driving around, we were followed. And as we had stopped in a cul-de-sac to turn around, we were approached and asked, what were we doing? And we said, we were just driving. And so my concern is, that could escalate with someone who might get offended. To me, it feels like a safety issue alone when you're at nighttime and people are approaching you and questioning what you're doing. You might run into the wrong person and get them pretty upset. We just explained, we're driving, and they said, well, you can't get out of your car. And we said, we're not going to get out of our car. It's just a nice summer evening. And, that was the extent of it. But it was, again, concerning to me that, these situations can easily escalate.
Yeah, thank you. Greg, did you have anything?
Yeah, I haven't experienced that in the last, say, year or two myself. However, I've heard from a few residents that have had similar experiences. What seems to be the case is mostly they have this and they feel like they were on private property. They were trespassing by being on the road because that's what they were told, or maybe the signs led them to believe that, or the guard shack. And so, yeah, so that's, and I think that's maybe more common. I think people that either drive up there or go up there, you get that impression that it is, and granted, there is private property and private open space. But that seemed to be quite common, that among, people that I've talked to in Alpine that believe that they can't go up there and hike, bike, walk, or drive up the road. But I wondered, and maybe someone knows, what was the what was the motivation to have the shack? I mean, clearly there's potentially some security benefits as utilized by the HOA. But was this passed? What was the motivation to have it on this particular, canyon and street at that point versus anywhere else? And what was the motivation of for doing so? Does anyone have the history from that time?
Without getting too deep into it, I don't have a lot of recollection about the discussion about the shack specifically. I was on the council at the time. Lon, I think you were there as well. I don't remember a lot of open discussion be devoted to the building itself or the positioning or why it was there. And so, I don't know if I can even answer that, even though I was present during much of it. I'm not sure, at this point, I think what we need to do is we need to find a solution, right? Because there are things that are happening on our public street that shouldn't be happening. There are stories of people being followed, being chased down, being stopped in the middle of a public street. These are things that are not authorized. The people there don't have the authority to do that, and the representation is not accurate. So I think probably the best way to conduct ourselves in this discussion might maybe rather than air it all out in a public meeting, maybe set up a time where staff and council and developer can get together and kind of work through whatever needs to be worked through. But the final message is that has to stop. It is not acceptable. It's not permissible at any level at this point.
Mayor, Will Jones here.
Yes, I will. Will, hang on just a second. I'm going to ask Lon if he'd like to provide any input, and then we'll move on to comment from you and Fraser right away.
Yeah, Mayor, I've not had any experience. I've been up the canyon quite a bit. I've seen people at I've always called it an information booth, but I haven't had anyone stop me ever. And obviously there's been people that have, but I haven't had any experience in that.
Okay, all right. So if there's any other comment by council, I'd be open to that now. If not, I'd like to move on to the property owners and see what they'd like to add to the discussion. Okay, Fraser, you were first to speak up. Would you like to take a moment?
Yes. First of all, if there are any incidents that have offended anybody or bothered anybody, we apologize. And clearly early on, there was insufficient training for the guards. And when we received Shane's letter, which was extremely well written and clear, we subsequently trained the guards, not guards, information officers, to do three things. Number one, do not stop any cars. Number two, if somebody stops there, give them information, which is, and be friendly about it. Number one is, here's the trailhead. There's a big parking lot there. You're welcome to use that. The roads are open. You can drive anywhere on the roads you like, but all the property off of the roads is private property. And so that's the instruction we've given them. If they have strayed from that, we should, as you suggest, Mayor, sit down and talk about that and correct that, and that's not appropriate. The other thing that they are asked to do is they do keep track of cars that come in, and if they don't emerge after 20 minutes, 25 minutes, then they are asked to go look. Because the other thing we have is we have a severe safety issue up here. I have my grandkids up here and they don't feel safe. And so the people that work here have brought down the volume tremendously in terms of unauthorized people going off, including into our backyard here just a couple of weeks ago, that are trespassing. As soon as they leave the road, they trespass. And fortunately, through the work of these young men, it's come down a lot. We feel a lot safer. But before then, my daughter said, I don't feel safe here. I'm not sure why I moved here. Because this is a known place where a lot of people come and go all over the place unauthorized. So the guards aren't supposed to follow somebody up. And Ms. Smune, if somebody did follow you, that was inappropriate. But after 20 minutes, they go around and check and see if somebody has left their vehicle. And when I'm on patrol, I go around most days. Every single day, I find trespassers. There isn't a day that doesn't go by that I don't find trespassers. And we're just trying to educate people, bring them down, have our community safe, make sure that the construction areas are safe. And so that's what we're trying to do. And maybe our information young men are still a little overzealous. And if so, we will correct that and just do the things that we've talked about. And but this is an area with very few people up here. There are only 3 families that live up here, and we get crushed with trespassers every single day and night. And so this has really helped a lot. We've had to call the police many, many, many times, and they've been wonderful and helpful. But we think we're at a good spot, but it sounds like we need to do more training. But the stuff early on clearly was out of line, and we thought we had corrected that. Will?
Yeah, first, if it's okay, Mary Ray, for me.
Go ahead, Will. Thanks.
Yes, the first thing to address is the reason for, it was brought up in the very beginning there. Why is there a booth there at all? If you go back to the discussion, originally there was going to be, the city was going to take Sliding Rock because of the big liability issue with Sliding Rock, who was going to control it, who was going to keep people on, off of it, so on and so forth. That's what got this going. And the fact that, you know, just the previous summer before we started construction, on the 24th of July, there were over 450 people at one time at Sliding Rock. And so this goes out in the media, it's still going out. It went out last year. The Sliding Rock is a great thing to do with you and your family. Well, this was one of the issues that we addressed back then when we talked about who was going to take liability. We agreed after great discussion with the council about how this would be. And our only goal here is to create information to help people know that there's a bathroom to do it. And that booth was going to be there for that very reason, to help people know that where they would be trespassing, to prevent calls to the police, prevent deal. Let's just suppose the other day I was up there and you guys came home to your backyard, and in your backyard, there's a family of 20 plus people, and they're there and they brought a treat and they're having a little picnic in your backyard. And you know what? They're running around, they're yelling, they're screaming, they're acting like it's theirs, but it's your backyard. And they were enjoying your backyard. You go and ask them to leave. And guess what they say to me, Troy? Put it in your face, dude. Get out of here. We don't have to leave. I says, wait a minute, you're in my backyard. No, we're here at Sliding Rock. I know, that's my backyard. That's my private backyard. Well, no, we're not leaving. Well, Troy, imagine it's in your backyard now. And these people act like this. Okay. No, I'm not. This is a great picnic. They don't even invite you to eat. They just eat it in front of you. And that's what we're dealing with up there. Fraser's telling you every day. Sunday night, dark, snowing like a banshee. I noticed there's lights up on the hill. Sure enough, it was only about an hour later, I get a call. I don't know who these people are. Mr. Jones, we know you have equipment up here. We're stuck on this road, this dirt road that goes up there, and we can't get out. Can you call the guys who have the equipment and come get us? Not only did I say no, I said, I will ask the police to come up and get you though, if you'd like, because you're trespassing. You're in a very dangerous area. Number one, that road right now is fully under construction. There's a valve sticking out of the road. There's stuff that you can't even see, especially when you got 6 to 8 inches of new snow. And yet they feel authorized to be there. They feel it's fine, but they went through 2 different sets of signs that say no. Friday, we quit at noon. We had to quit at noon because we have trail close signs up there. Guess what? We got told as contractors to get lost. We're trying to protect these people who are on this trail saying, this is not a safe place. The reason it's closed is there's rock. You go look on the trail right now. It's strewn with rocks because you can't control, you don't know when a rock's going to roll down. So we're trying to protect the public. We can't even do that efficiently. People don't allow us to. And you guys wonder why we do. So, okay, summary of all that. I can go on. Campfires in the middle of a cul-de-sac with a skating group. I had to stop them. I said, what are you doing? We're going to have a hot dog roast. I said, what do you mean you're going to have a hot dog? Right here. It was a Saturday night this summer. And they were just going to cook hot dogs right in the middle of the cul-de-sac. What if that's in your cul-de-sac? You okay with that? I'm not okay with it up there at all, number one. You looked at the other cul-de-sac. We sent pictures of what they write in the cul-de-sacs, the swear words that they use, and paint the city street. We're not doing enough in reality, but we're trying to be careful. We're trying to be careful. But so my point is, Mayor, I think you hit right on it. We would love to sit down with whoever was being willing to, if it's a whole council or a group of them. We were going to meet with Jason Thielen. If you remember, his schedule got kind of messed up and he couldn't meet, but we're happy to meet with anybody, go over and have you come spend an evening with us. I was up there tonight. You should have seen it. It was a circus, you know.
Yeah, and Will, I totally understand what you're saying, and I, on one hand, and on the other hand, I know that we've had several developments that have been, have gone up in town, and you've been part of those things, and I'm sure there are things that happen in those as well. I think that the point that we're trying to make in this meeting is that we have an issue where the impression has been given it seems with intent, that it's a private area, that it is not public access. And I'm not saying that things haven't happened up there, but on the other hand, people are being made to feel like they might be trespassing for just driving up there. And that's not the case for law-abiding.
We don't want that to be the case, Mayor.
And may I add one more thing that might help this a lot, is we're scheduled to cease manning the information booth at the end of this week for the winter, because the winter is not a problem, or at least we hope it's not a problem. And so we won't be manning it until March. And so we have some time to work on this and discuss it and have written policies to say, okay, here's exactly what these young men will say and will not say, and procedures, and we'll share those with whoever wants to talk about that and review that. We're just trying to keep our community safe, and it hasn't been safe until we started taking some of these actions, and we're more than willing to correct them, because what we tell our young men is, if you have any interaction with somebody, make it friendly, smile, and tell them how wonderful Alpine is, but just please respect the private property. That's the bottom line communication that we've asked them to do.
Okay. Is there anything else the council would like to bring up, or staff? So I guess if somebody would like to, I'm not sure how you would word your motion, but if there's a motion that somebody would like to make, I'd entertain that motion now.
I was prepared to do a motion, but if they're not going to be staffing it for the rest of the winter, I say, do the meeting, and then, but honestly, they can't keep telling people that the street is private property, which is what they have been doing. And I know you said you've been training the guys, but I specifically only ask people that have had encounters since June and July after your training has occurred or after the response that Shane got. And it's still happening, and that's not okay.
Yeah, and I think that we need to go out of our way now to inform people that it is a public road. And it seems like that would be the appropriate thing to do, to mark it with a sign or to do something else that would create a clear understanding that this is a public road. But let's save details like that for our meeting. And if we need to come back to council with something to vote on, we can do that. But I'd like to get that on the calendar, maybe outside of this meeting tomorrow morning. Shane, would you mind finding out what availability looks like for everyone? And I'm tempted to make this a meeting that would be announced. And in fact, I think I'd like to move forward with that, to have a meeting that would be announced and have minutes taken so that we can have more than 2 council members attend if they would like to. Oh, Shane, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry about that. I did talk to Will earlier and asked if it'd be possible to meet this week or next week. At that time, I guess I wasn't thinking of a noticed meeting, so we'll have to coordinate a time when that can happen, and we'll start on that tomorrow. So,
okay, can we go ahead and make that a meeting that? Well, let's see how many council members want to attend. If it's more than 2, then we'll have to announce the meeting and provide minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Does that meet everyone's needs and expectations on this topic? Anybody, feel free to speak up if it does not. Okay, that's the way we'll move forward then. Thank you very much. Thanks, Will. Thanks, Fraser. And we will see you hopefully next week. All right, with that, we'll move on to staff reports, starting with Brian William, Chief.
Hey, just really quick, we had, myself and Lieutenant Brooks had the pleasure of meeting with the Alpine City Youth Council last Thursday. Spent about an hour with them, hour plus. And if you remember, those of you who've been around long enough, the Alpine City Youth Council has done something unique that I know of no other youth council that does this, but they provide a dinner for public safety and first responders. They've done that for 4 or 5 years now. With everything going on with the COVID-19 and the restrictions that were in place, we were not able to do that this year, but we did elect to meet together and social distance as much as possible in the council chambers there, wearing masks. I met with the youth council this past Thursday. They asked us to come and speak with them, and we discussed everything from traffic stops to lockdowns at the high school, and all the fun questions that teenagers ask law enforcement officers. But we really enjoyed our time with the youth council, and a great group of kids that just want to do things for their community and be involved. And it was just an absolute pleasure for us to do that. So I just wanted to report on that. We had a good time. We look forward to the opportunity to meet together again with them in with that dinner that they provide for first responders. But it was just an absolute joy for us to do that. I just want to let you know, appreciate them and appreciate you guys. That's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. That's great. We love our youth council. They do a lot of stuff that the rest of us aren't willing to do, and they take it up gladly and usually do a great job of it. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, they really are great kids. Okay, Chief Thompson, do you have anything?
Just a couple of items. We've had several requests in the last couple of weeks for open burning. Obviously, with the window being closed due to dry climate and higher than normal temperatures, we've held on any of that. The state forester pushed that out till November 30th. With the weather change that we had this last weekend, we've had a bunch of requests that came in. I'm inclined to just leave it as is for now, but should that I guess, should we get some warmer weather and see some additional moisture, which is predicted in the next 2 to 3 weeks, there may be a possibility where we look at some sort of a window there between now and the end of the year. But we'll just kind of play that by ear. Obviously, still pretty dry out there and don't want to have a problem. But if there are requests that come into the City Hall, we've restricted those at this point. I mentioned to Shane this afternoon that the county is doing a free flu shot clinic that will be held later this month. Some information can be pushed out for that, but they're trying to do a drive-by clinic, and this is part of the intent behind that as well, to get the word out. They accept appointments and also just a regular no appointment drive up, but part of that is to gear up for what may potentially be a drive-through clinic for the COVID-19 vaccine when that comes out. And so they would like the information to get out to communities. So I've pushed that information out to Shane this afternoon. I just heard about it today. And we just encourage participation in that. It'll be in Spanish Fork and be coordinated through the health department. We have seen an increase in our patients that are COVID-19 positive with respect to going to homes where they're already COVID positive, or in some cases, transport from the hospital back to homes or back to a care center. And starting to just see the numbers really increase there. That is having some effect on our workforce. We have had our first COVID positive employee this past week. We feel pretty fortunate we've made it this far without having any issues. We've had symptomatic employees, but this is the first one we've had that's been positive. I guess with that, it is likely, as we see these numbers tick up, that we're having a hard time on certain days maintaining our full staffing level. And in some cases, we've had to mandatory positions to make sure we have minimum people at work. One of the things we're doing to combat that, we now have ability to do antigen testing of our employees once a week. And then if they're symptomatic, we can also do tests. It's a 15-minute quick test that is not quite as accurate as the PCR test that you get at the hospital, but it's like 97.5% accurate. So we feel very comfortable with that. And it's been a game changer for us. When somebody comes in with a symptom, we can kind of rule out whether or not they've got COVID or it's just some other issue. So that's kind of affecting staffing and just workforce in general. We're taking the precautions we need to try and prolong that, but it is an issue for us. And then the last item I had, we concluded our fire hydrant flow testing and maintenance and exercising checks of hydrants in 100% done in Highland. We got part of the way through the process this year in Alpine, and just due to kind of a late start with that, somewhat because of COVID and other parts because of some issues with wells and water usage, as you guys talked about earlier in the meeting. We did not get through 100% of that this year. We'll pick that up again in the spring.
Thank you, Chief. Are you, I'm sorry, I forgot the question I had for you. It was related to COVID. Anyway, thank you for your report. Austin, did you have anything you needed to visit with us about?
I do have a couple things. So tonight we made some headway. We adopted the transportation element of the general plan. However, we still have the rest of the general plan to work on. So I just wanted to get the council's input on how you would like to approach this moving forward. Do we want to, my idea was maybe we take one meeting a month and we focus that one meeting, we have an item from the general plan on there that we work on. Another idea is we could have a work session. We start the meeting an hour early. That gives us more time to just focus only on the general plan. So how do you want to move forward with adopting the rest of the general plan?
with a work session, we'd still have to announce that and allow public participation, wouldn't we?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I like the idea. I like the idea of at least one a month for sure.
Yeah, I like that too. Anybody else have a feeling? Let's,
I think a work session before meetings makes sense.
let's try doing a work session in the next one and tackle one of the issues. We only have, let's see, we have one meeting scheduled we have 2 meetings scheduled this month and 1 in December, right? Shane?
Yes, that's correct.
Then we're off until the second week of January.
Yes.
Austin, if we did that, that give us, we've only really got, traditionally our Christmas party is on the first one in December, but that'll be a little different this year. So if we only have room for 2 more discussions in this calendar year, is that going to cause any problems?
I mean, no, ideally, as long as we can start working on it, I think, and make some progress, it's a positive thing. So.
Okay.
Okay. Great. So we'll plan on that.
I'm wondering, sorry, if we just started January with that cadence.
I would say we do have a packed agenda probably coming for the next meeting. So there's not going to be any time on that agenda. So it might not hurt to wait up to put it off a little bit.
I think that's great. If we have time to wait, that's great.
So if I'm hearing 1 time per month, a 6 p.m. work session to work on the general plan.
Yeah.
That's what I understood.
That actually goes
Okay.
into when we get to me, but sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, I had one other thing that I wanted to bring up, and that was the Bangor property. So we've had a field trip out there. We went out, looked at the site. That property's still hanging out there. The Bangors aren't going to, they're not going to have that forever. And so they have an opportunity that if we want to do something with, help craft a new zone or do whatever we want to, have an opportunity. So how does the city council want to approach that moving forward? Is that something that the council is interested in? Do we want to create a plan for that? How do you want to attack that moving forward?
Could that be the first area that we address with the general plan? Because that would be a natural fit for that.
Maybe like the zoning section of the general plan. Yeah, that could be part of that discussion for sure. Yeah, definitely.
I think anytime that we have property owners that are willing to work with the city, we should engage. I think that's a great opportunity to collaborate on something that, if we can come to an agreement that's amenable to both sides and that's palatable to the citizens of Alpine, I think that's a win-win.
Yeah. Agreed. Two birds, Austin.
Okay. Sounds like we have a plan moving forward then. Okay, those are the only items that I had. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Bonnie, do you have anything?
Not tonight.
Okay. Thank you. Shane?
Yeah, so just a reminder that this Thursday at 5 p.m., so November 12th at 5 p.m. are the Blue Bison hearings. The attorneys met with the hearing officer I think it was earlier might have been the end of last week. They decided to go virtual with this. Kind of for in person, it seemed like it would be more effective and just limit the number of people that could be there, and then still broadcast it on YouTube. But in the end, they ended up agreeing to go virtual. So that will be broadcast just like this meeting is on YouTube. There's a link on the homepage of our website. It's been noticed and everything. So if you'd like to view that, you can jump on there and go through that link. Yeah.
Just to clarify, the public is welcome to listen in, but they are allowed to comment, correct?
That's correct. Yes. Yep. And for the mayor, and Jason is not here, but our Lone Peak meeting that normally would be tomorrow morning is a week from tomorrow on the 18th at 7:30 a.m. Just a reminder there. When we were talking about Three Falls, we'll mention the trail and the road construction that's going on. Just wanted to make sure. I think we need to work some details out and some things as far as length of time for the trail to be closed. But for safety reasons, there's going to have to be a period of time where that trail would be closed, coming from the ridge up to Three Falls. The section of the road they're working on is really rocky, and just don't want to have someone get hurt by a rock rolling off the hill there.
And Shane, I know you and I spoke about this, and Will, if you're still listening in, I think we got to arrive at some kind of a schedule where the trail is closed, but not for an extended period of time. And I'm just kind of thinking out loud that if we could say that work days where the trail may get closed down, but days during that same week where it could be accessible and rideable. Now that the trails are there, I don't know that it's fair or palatable to close it down for months at a time because there's enough demand, and I don't want it to be unsafe. I also don't want to shut people.
Can I speak then?
Sure, go ahead, Will.
Yeah, Troy, my only thing here is safety. You know, who wants to ride the trail more than me? If someone wants to be on there more than I do, get them in line. But I also know by being up there every single day that it isn't safe. And the worst thing to do is let's have a real accident on our trail because we thought we should keep it open. It's got to be cool. They're working. It's incredible. This stuff is just breaking up. You don't even know when you're going to see it to come apart into that real heavy rock stuff that we haven't run into up there before. And I'm not trying. I would love that thing to be open more than anybody because that's my goal. And I will improve it when we're done. We intend to go up there and make some really super improvements on the trail as it exists now. Because we're going to have to get down there and clean it. And right now, Troy, there's a place that you can't even get through because of the rock. They've rolled down off of that. And we've tried to put netting up. It just rips it down and goes right through it. It doesn't even slow it down. So it wouldn't hurt them. It would kill them. And that's what we're worried about. And we called the police the other day because we couldn't help. These guys would not leave. They would just wanted to yell and fight with us. And the cop comes up, and of course he tells Jason, he's the contractor, oh yeah, all the liability is yours. If someone gets killed, you're well, he packed up right then and went home. He says, I can't work here if I can't have this kind of thing. Right. So that's it shut us down, Troy. That's how serious it is.
Okay. So rather than belabor it here in the meeting, I think what we need to do is sit down and work out a timeline so that we're not shutting it down for a whole season or periods of time that create no sense of urgency. But let's sit down and do that. Sure, we're covering the bases, but still doing the trail.
Yeah, we want it open. We want it open, and I want to be able to get working on it so that we can get it really in great shape for next year's riding season. And the best time to do that is in the next few months, while there's moisture in the ground, which we've never had this year. And we can get a lot done if we can. So our goal is to make it safe and make it better than it is.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Go ahead, Shane.
Okay. So our next meeting would be November 24th. Jason's not here to speak, but is everyone gonna be around? Will we have a quorum?
I'll be here.
I'll be here, but I know Jason will be out of town.
Yeah. I'll be here.
And I'm here.
Yeah.
We'll have a quorum.
Okay, good deal. Thank you. And then, Mayor, maybe you'll address this in a minute, but we need to decide on December 8th. By state law, technically, we're supposed to have a meeting at least one time per month.
Yeah.
Normally, we notice the Christmas party. If there's, I can think of maybe once or twice, we've had a minor item of business, and then it's the Christmas party. So
Yeah.
we'll have to talk about that.
Yeah, I guess.
And then as we go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess my idea of that meeting was going to be to have a very light agenda, and I mean a very light agenda. And even though we're probably not going to end up having a Christmas party, but let people go. It's that time of year.
Yeah, I agree. We can accommodate that for sure. We mentioned this before, the breakfast meeting with the school district, December 4th at 7:30 a.m. at City Hall. And hopefully, I guess we can have that meeting. We'll just have to play that by ear, I guess. And my last thing, Craig's still on here. I just want to thank him for making the transition smooth. We've had several meetings and discussions, and he's doing a great job for us. So,
yeah.
Hey, you read the script. You read the script just fine, Shane. Thank you.
He sent me nothing, I promise.
Good.
Except a big fat check. No.
Yeah. Okay. Is that all from you, Shane? Oh, it looks like so. You just muted. Okay, Craig, I'll give you the last word.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Remember what I did last time?
Did you move to adjourn?
Yeah, we're just grateful that we're able to do the work for the city. I know you have high expectations for us, and I hope in the last month we've been able to meet those expectations. And we're just grateful to be part of a great community. And thank you very much for that opportunity. And I'll move to adjourn.
Hang on, I have something to say first. I gotta let you speak after me from now on, then you can make the motion. Guys, the only thing I really have is a question, and you don't have to answer the question right now, but Shane and I have discussed this a little bit. The timing of our meetings, and I mentioned earlier that when we talked about having a work session at 6 before our next meeting or starting in January, I would actually like to throw it out there, see if we wouldn't want to start our meetings at 6 from now on. It might be tough for me to make that work, but I think I can do it. And I just wanted to see if what the rest of the council thought about that. Now, the other side of that discussion is, does that mean we still go until 10? No, the objective is to start early and get out early. So I would throw that out there. If you have comments right now, love to hear it. But if not, maybe we could kind of mull that over and talk about it a little bit.
Well, I would like to do that. I've been thinking in the winter months, it's dark and I'm just sitting and waiting for council to start. So at least before, during this daylight savings time change, that would be great. And then we go back to the later one.
Okay. Lon?
Along with that, then I would say we pass a meeting ordinance that says that we'd have to have a supermajority vote if we go past 9 o'clock. that we table every agenda item past 9 o'clock unless the supermajority says we need to go further.
I actually love.
I like that, Lon.
I like it a lot.
I second Lon's opinion. Yes, I am all for starting at 6 as long as we have a hard end time at 9. I
I like
would, you know, if
And-
you
and it-
promise to
yeah.
keep the meetings moving and going and make it efficient,
Yeah.
I'm on 100%.
And it
Okay.
just has to end at 9. It just does unless we vote to carry it further.
Yes. We actually did that for a while, 7 or 8 years ago, and I thought it went really well, and then somehow we just stopped doing it. So I'm all for that. Greg, do you have anything to add to that?
No, thanks. I think that should be fine. Thank you.
All right. If anybody cannot make that work, please let me know or let Shane know, because I don't want to put an undue burden on anybody's schedule, but I feel like that would be better. And I totally agree with the comments about a hard stop at 9 o'clock. So that's really all I had. So I'll entertain a motion to.
Well, no. I actually have something I want.
Oh, did I
bring
not
up.
call on you, Carla? I'm sorry.
No,
That
I
was
don't
my
think,
mistake.
I don't know if you called on the rest of city council, but I do
didn't.
have an item.
Sorry.
So the blockade that's on Three Falls, Shane, is there any way to move it back to the other side of the trail where it crosses?
Yeah, good point.
Because I feel like the construction is way far beyond that point. And even if it's just right on the other side of where the trail crosses, I feel like a lot of that misunderstanding would probably be alleviated.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You have people who are, you know, going on the trail, either they're lost or whatnot. It ends up being a lot longer than they think it is, and they just want to come down on the road, and that's where some of these people are being confronted. I think if we just move it back, and I don't believe it's a safety hazard if we move it back 20 feet to the other side of the trail.
No,
You're
you're
on
muted.
mute.
Sorry. I'm trying to remember where the signs are, if the parking lot is right there, if it provides a section of road. I can't remember exactly how that lays out. You might.
So the way that it's laid out is you've got the pavilion and the private parking
Mhm.
lot. Then you've
Yep.
got the blockade. And then about
Yep.
20 feet beyond that, or to the east of it, is where you have the trail crossing the road.
Yeah.
So just move
I
it to
know
the
where you're
other side of
talking
the
about.
trail.
It's probably more like 50 to 75 yards.
Okay.
On that.
Is it that far?
Yeah, it's a little farther, but it's what you're saying is dead on. I mean, I think that creates confusion. Shane, in fact, you remember a few weeks ago, I sent you a picture of it when I got up there. I said, why is this sign here? Because it didn't make sense to me that it cuts you off before you get to that trail. Even if, and at this point, legally, we can park on the road if we want to. If you did park on the road, you feel like you're trespassing if you continue to walk on the road to get to that trail. To take the
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like
Okay.
the construction is way beyond that point.
Yeah, it's true.
At least from what I've been able to, I mean, it's been a while since I've been up there riding, but from the last time I rode, it seemed like the construction was way, way beyond that point, that it could very easily be
It
moved
is.
to the
There.
other side of the trail.
The nearest part of
Yeah,
construction
it is.
is that area, that overflow area for the equipment that will later become a parking lot.
So
that's
if you just do
right.
it before that, I mean, literally, if they just move it to the other side of that trail, I think that would really help.
Alleviate some problems.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Thanks, Carla. Thanks. That was a good point to bring up.
And then I also had one more question. Do we do any grooming at all in the wintertime with the snow for, you know, fat tire? What is it called? People that
Yeah.
ride in the snow?
Fat bikes.
Fat bikes. No? I'm
Not
getting
not
blank
that's
stares.
coordinated by the city.
Okay.
Not that's coordinated by the city.
The
Okay.
Forest Service does up the canyon, but we
Okay.
don't have any here.
Okay, yeah, someone just asked and I said, oh, I have no idea. Because as you know, I take a long hiatus from biking, and so it's all new to me right now.
But you know what? I think there's enough foot traffic on the trails. I have friends that run those trails all winter long, and I would imagine that they pack the trails down enough to help the bikers out. I think the fat bikers hit it too. I don't think we do anything to do it for them, but they do it themselves.
Okay, I would just think it'd be awful to be the first runner through that trail, though.
Yeah, I
No,
don't know
that's
why
all
they
I
do it.
have. Nothing else.
Okay. I apologize to the rest of you. I panicked when Craig made the motion and I felt like I needed to speak and then I forgot that none of you had. My bad. Lon, do you have anything?
No, Mayor, I'm good.
Okay. Jessica?
Just checking to see if there's any new information about the website or if we've made any progress on that.
I know that Carolyn has talked with 2 or 3 companies and kind of getting information from them leading up to proposals. So
Okay.
there has been some activity on that yet.
That'll be super helpful with noticing committee meetings, and I think just having a good communication platform to access will be great. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Greg?
Just a couple of things. One, I think in the newsletter it said Santa was coming to town last night. I don't know if that was a date error or if the scheduling mix-up, but apparently I heard a few families went over to the park and didn't find Santa over there. So that might have been printed wrong or something. Anyway,
Bonnie,
I don't
do you
know if
know
anyone
what,
knows.
It probably was an error. Let me look and see. Hold on.
Well, while she's looking, I'll go on. One other thought I've had. There was a morning this summer where 2 landscape trailers were stolen, and then I think a couple weeks later, a third one was in Alpine. And with the package thefts and other things, it seems like since we have so few entrance points that are regularly used, I thought, we might have an opportunity to, when there's a crime, have a high definition camera and, see the license plate of the car that's, the truck that's pulling out with somebody's trailer. I thought that might be a useful safety thing, just an idea that I've had that could help. And I think there have been a few other people that have had that suggestion to try to crack down on some of these thieves, because oftentimes those doorbell cameras will see the car, but they're not good enough to get a good face or a license plate. But maybe an idea worth considering longer term.
So Greg, are you suggesting we put them on the 3 exits from town on the street?
Yeah, that would be kind of the idea. Put a camera that could recognize license plates. Yeah, on basically the 3 main gateways, and they could be utilized when there's an incident like that.
Wonder what legal implications there would be to that. Certainly Yeah.
You'd want to be careful and restrictive, but lots of countries do it, and I think certain cities, and
yeah.
That's all I had, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Greg. Have I missed anybody? All right. Well, thank you all. Thank you for a productive meeting. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye, Lon Love.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. I heard a majority in there. Good night, everybody. Thank you.